Chapter 313. Early the next morning, Wuming switched the locations of the Shuoyu mansion and the Emiya mansion. As Wuming would be leaving soon, Wuming placed the Shuoyu mansion that Meiyu was used to living in back in the Emiya mansion so that it would be convenient for the little Lolas to connect. Before Wuming restored the Shuoyu mansion, he informed Julian, "I'm going back to another parallel world. I'm taking Angelica with me." Then, before Julian could explode, Wuming slipped away. But there was no need to worry that Shiro Emiya and the others couldn't find Wuming when they returned. Wuming had already told Shiro Emiya how to travel to a parallel world. As long as Shiro Emiya wished, he could travel to a parallel world from the special room in the Emiya mansion at any time. But this didn't mean that Shiro Emiya was a mage. Zelik could freely travel to parallel worlds. This was the benefit of mastering the second method. Apart from that, Zelik could also mobilize the magic power of other worlds and other operations related to parallel worlds. On the other hand, Shiro Emiya relied solely on the equipment that Wuming set up in the Emiya mansion. The two couldn't be compared at all. Not only did Wuming and Zelik have the ability to travel to parallel worlds, but the Ainsworth family also had the ability to travel to parallel worlds. The fact that Angelica and Beatrice came to the Emiya mansion was an example. But according to Angelica, there were huge drawbacks when they used the technology to travel to parallel worlds. Not only did they have to set up a magical formation in advance, but they also needed a large number of worlds to set up the magical formation. The amount of magic power to activate the magical formation was also a problem. Moreover, the effect of the magical formation had a time limit. As Ainsworth used the displacement magic to swap the surrounding space and the same location in the parallel world, the amount of magic power required was huge. This was also the reason why Angelica and the others had come out of the Yuanzhong Mountains. They had borrowed the Holy Grail, which contained a large amount of magic power. With the help of the Holy Grail, the substitution magic was successfully activated. The Yuanzhong Mountain in Elia's world and the Yuanzhong Mountain in Meiyou's world were exchanged, and the two of them successfully arrived in Elia's world. Back then, when Shiro Emiya made a wish, the Holy Grail had used a similar method. Meiyu and the Yuanzhong Mountain were transferred to Ilia's world, while the Yuanzhong Mountain was transferred to Meiyou's world. This had a similar effect as displacement magic. However, it was permanent because Meiyou's world's Yuanzhong Mountain followed Meiyu to Ilia's world's Yuanzhong Mountain and never changed again. Ilia's Yuanzhong Mountain had always been Meiyou's Yuanzhong Mountain. The reason why Angelica and Beatrice were able to escape from Wuming's assassination was that Angelica had used the parting sword to directly open a passage to a parallel world and survived. And to be able to accurately arrive at the target world could only mean that Angelica's luck was very strong. The bad ones basically died in the spacetime turbulence, and the good ones generally went to the wrong parallel world. This was also why Wuming was experienced with Angelica being able to return safely. To put it simply, parallel worlds weren't so easy to travel. If Wuming didn't have the talent ability to adapt to space-time, he wouldn't dare to travel randomly. But there was no other way. The talent ability of the root dragon to travel between worlds had the adaptability to space-time. Now that he thought about it, this passive ability was really good. After returning to Ilya's world, because it was summer vacation, Meiyu and the others didn't have to go to school. As a result, Ilya and Blackie came to look for Meiyu almost every day, along with Ilya's good friends Yujianza and the others. As for Wuming, apart from studying Pandora's box, he spent the rest of his time happily playing with Meiyu and the others. He visited the house of Einstein Barons and greeted Mrs. Alice Field, Scylla, Lislet, Shiro Emiya, and the others. Wuming enjoyed this simple and ordinary life. Then on this day Wuming found what he wanted from Pandora's box. Wuming sat in the courtyard. Because he found a clue he wanted, Wuming rejected Meiyou's invitation to go out and play. At this time, Wuming closed his eyes and immersed his mind in Pandora's box. Wuming floated in nothingness. This was the empty interior of Pandora's box. At this moment, there was a trace of destruction in front of Wuming. It was very strange. There was no physical object inside Pandora's box, but now there was a trace of destruction. This is the power of origin. Wuming put his hand on the trace of destruction and softly analyzed. Then Wuming used his origin power. The trace touched by Wuming let out a light, and shadows emerged from the trace. These are? Wuming was surprised. In an incomparably mysterious place, countless black mud gathered together. There was a little light in the black mud, and the light was pulled out of the black mud by an unknown power. It was visible to the naked eye that it was an infant in swaddling clothes. Then the infant was sent out of this mysterious place by this unknown power. As if it had lost something important, the black mud surged even more wildly. Soon, the black mud spread out from this mysterious place like a scattered army looking for the infant. Then, a stream of black mud came to a certain world and entered a black box. The item in the box fused with the black mud. Then, after an unknown period of time, the box was opened by someone. Finally, a ray of light shot out from the black mud. Then the black mud was burned by the sun and completely disappeared. This was the process of the black mud fusing with the disaster in Pandora's box, from the beginning to the end. Like a movie, it was displayed in front of Wu Ming. After seeing all this, Wu Ming stopped the transmission of his origin power and let go of the trace. Then this trace turned into a palm-sized black object that looked like a badge. Wu Ming fell silent. That infant was undoubtedly Wu Ming himself. Although he didn't know why, Wu Ming was very sure of it. And that mysterious place was the source. Although he couldn't see it clearly, there was no doubt about it. The light in the black mud was the hope in Pandora's box, and the one that was burned to death by the sun was Wu Ming's incarnation of the sun. What is the true identity of this black mud? Wu Ming muttered to himself in confusion. After thinking for a while, Wu Ming picked up the item with the black badge. In an instant, the badge attached to the back of Wu Ming's hand like a maggot, forming a black mark that looked like a dragon-shaped command seal. In the outside world, Wu Ming opened his eyes, looked at the black mark on the back of his hand and said solemnly, "Looks like I have to leave this world as soon as possible." Chapter 3:14. Early the next morning, Wu Ming made breakfast early, used magic to keep it warm, and left the Shuayu mansion. England Clock Tower. Outside a room at the top, a purple-black portal opened and Wu Ming walked out. As if they were very familiar with each other, Wu Ming didn't knock on the door, but directly pushed the door open and entered. The first thing he saw was a strong old man with red eyes. After all, they were old acquaintances. Wu Ming sat on the sofa and spoke directly. "Did you already know that those things had merged with the disaster in Pandora's box?" Unsurprisingly, the world of Mayu was about to be destroyed because Ainsworth did something to the black mud in Pandora's box. Wu Ming didn't believe that Zelik, who solved the crisis of the world's destruction, didn't know about the black mud. "Yes, but it was something that was fated to be with you, so I kept it." Zelik looked at Wu Ming with his pair of unusually bloody red eyes. Wu Ming didn't want to be outdone and also used his own red eyes to meet Zelika's eyes. Although both of them had red eyes, Zelika's red eyes leaned toward blood and was quite bloody, while Wu Ming's red eyes leaned toward gems and were deep and mysterious. "Well, forget it, I'm not here to condemn you this time, I'm leaving." After all, the black mud wasn't a big threat to Wu Ming. "Are you going to find the black mud?" Although it was a question, Zelik said with a certain tone. "A piece of black mud is enough to cause the destruction of the world. I don't have to say more about the impact of the other black mud on other worlds." Wu Ming's fingers gently tapped on the coffee table in front of him as he said faintly, "What's more, the black mud has a lot to do with my background." Wu Ming thought. "I see, protecting the world is the mission of the origin dragon?" Zelik said. "In a sense, you're right." Then Wu Ming stood up and was about to leave. "I can feel that the suppression is getting weaker and weaker," Zelik suddenly said. Wu Ming stopped in his tracks when he heard that. Ever since Wu Ming returned to this world, he had not communicated with the suppressive force. This was also one of the reasons why Wu Ming needed to rely on his own body's power to make a direct change. Wu Ming tried to contact Alea through the power of origin, but Alea did not reply to him. Although Gaia responded to Wu Ming's call, the response was intermittent, as if she was too busy. Wu Ming had a hunch that something bad had happened to Gaia and Alea ever since he learned that there were countless black mud going out to other worlds. "Let's go look for the person who is connected to many stars and can resolve this crisis," Zelik suddenly said. "You really have a bad sense of humor, Kit." Wu Ming turned his head and looked at Zelik with an amused gaze. "Actually, the you in the other world is a clone, right?" Wu Ming said something shocking. "Although I don't understand the second method, I know that it's related to the parallel worlds. After you mastered the second method, you've already fused yourself from all the worlds, right? And now, because of the appearance of the black soil, you've learned about me and created an opportunity for me to come to this world. You want to use this to lead me onto the right path, right?" Wu Ming crossed his arms and said calmly, "Ah." As expected of the legendary life form from the big source, Zelik laughed. "That's right. I can travel through parallel worlds. When I was traveling through parallel worlds, I accidentally learned about the disaster and your arrival. So, I used the second law to create a clone of myself and placed it in almost every parallel world, waiting for your arrival." Zelik laughed, not embarrassed at being exposed at all. But this also happened to save some worlds that were on the verge of destruction. However, I can't resolve the disaster in that world. The only thing I can do is to seal them in Pandora's box of that world and delay the disaster. Zelik waved his hand. Wuming finally understood that Zelik was a genius who could create class cards. Such a genius couldn't open Pandora's box, and it took him 1,000 years of effort to completely open it. It turned out that Zelik had used the second law to seal Pandora's box. If I'm not wrong, the you in that world is actually your original body, Wuming said. That's right. After all, I've already found you. I've also retrieved the clones in other worlds. You really have a bad taste. Wuming looked at Zelik helplessly. Haha, isn't this interesting? This old man is having a good time, Zelrich said with a big laugh. Well, in that case you should know about that world. The world that Wuming was talking about was a world where a large amount of black soil existed. It was the world that Wuming was guided to by the dragon-shaped black command spell in his hand. This dragon-shaped black command spell was actually a signal transmitter that could help Wuming find other worlds where the black soil existed. However, this command spell could also allow the black soil in other worlds to find Wuming. It was also because of this that Wuming chose to leave this world as soon as possible. Of course, I can no longer enter the world with the most black soil. It has completely surrounded the periphery of the world. That's why I chose your help. I can't do anything anymore. Zelik said. However, if it's a small portion of the black soil that invades, I can still resist it. Go in peace. Zelik smiled. I feel like you're implying something. Wuming complained. Didn't you come here to ask me to protect your sister and the others? I'll agree. You make it sound like I'm begging you. Wuming turned his head, opened the door and left. Zelik looked at the door and fell into deep thought. After a moment, Zelik spoke. Where's the origin dragon? He returned to the Shuayu mansion through the teleportation portal. At this moment, Mayu was sitting on the sofa in a daze, while Angelica was standing beside Mayu in a maid outfit. Brother Wuming. When Mayu saw Wuming, she jogged over and hugged Wuming. What's wrong? Why are you so excited? I didn't leave without saying goodbye. Wuming smiled and patted Mayu's little head. Mayu lay in Wuming's arms without saying anything. Master Wuming, Mayu hasn't eaten breakfast yet. Angelica bowed slightly and said, Really, how can you not eat? Wuming pinched Mayu's little nose. Brother Wuming isn't here. I don't have an appetite. Mayu blushed as if she was not used to this kind of pampering. Let's go eat together. Chapter 315. Then Wuming proposed to bring Mayu to the amusement park. Moreover, it was only the two of them. This made Mayu extremely happy. Although it was not bad to be with Ilya and the others, it was still better to have brother Wuming all to herself. This was not selfish. Every sister would want to be alone with the brother they liked. It was human nature. For the entire day Wuming played with Mayu. On the streets at night, Wuming held Mayu's hand as they walked toward their home. Mayu, I'm leaving tonight, Wuming suddenly said. After saying that, Wuming easily felt Mayu's body tremble. However, Mayu instantly adjusted her body's condition in an attempt to prevent Wuming from noticing. However, Mayu also knew that how could Wuming not notice? I'm sorry, brother Wuming. I'm still a little. Mayu lowered her head. She did not dare to look at Wuming. You little idiot. I've told you many times. Don't apologize. Mayu has nothing to apologize for. Wuming pressed down hard on Mayu's little head as a punishment. I know. Brother Wuming, stop pressing down on my head. Although Mayu was complaining, it was obvious from her expression that Mayu was enjoying herself. I've promised you. It's just a slight delay. I'll be back soon. Wuming smiled. I believe you, brother Wuming. Mayu smiled at Wuming. Soon, Wuming and Mayu returned to the Shuayu residence. Arriving at the door of Shuayu's house, Wuming and Mayu entered the room and noticed that there were 2 pairs of shoes in the entryway. They seemed to be primary school-style shoes. Could it be that Ilya and Little Black are here? Mayu first thought of her little friends. Most likely. Then Wuming patted Mayu's head. Let's go. Yes. Arriving at the living room, Ilya and Blackie were sitting on the sofa and watching television. There were 2 cups of drinks on the coffee table in front of them. Angelica was standing at the side. Needless to say, the drinks must have been prepared by Angelica. It had to be said that Angelica was becoming more and more like a mature maid. Her use of displacement magic had reached perfection and was of great help to the maid's work. Ilya. Little Black. Mayu called out their names and ran over. Mayu and Big Brother are back. Ilya stood up. Really? Why did you come back so late? I was bored to death. Seeing that Wuming and Mayu had arrived, Little Black instantly laid down on the sofa in an unsightly posture and spoke in a half-helpless and half-coquettish manner. Angelica bowed and reported to Wuming, Lord Wuming, Miss Ilya and Miss Chloe have been here for some time. Thus, when you weren't here, I took the liberty to prepare drinks for them and let them watch television to pass the time. Thank you for your hard work, Angelica. You can go and rest first. Wuming waved his hand at Angelica. Yes. With that, Angelica left the living room. Then Wuming looked at Ilya and Little Black. Why are you two here? Did something happen? What? Big Brother doesn't welcome us? How sad. After all, I was once a member of this family. Little Black teased Wuming. But, Big Brother, because Little Black and I were worried that you would leave without saying goodbye, so... Ilya's face was a little red. That's why Ilya excitedly pulled me and jogged all the way here. Little Black waved his hand and looked at Ilya helplessly. This is all Little Black's fault. Who asked you to keep saying that Big Brother would leave without saying goodbye? Ilya was so agitated that her face was flushed red. She pounced on Little Black helplessly and started punishing Little Black. Of course it was just scratching his armpit. Wait a minute. What do you mean it's my fault? Didn't you also want to see Big Brother? However, how could Little Black just sit there and wait for death? He flipped his hand and subdued Ilya. Damn it, I won't yield. Ilya said unyieldingly. Seeing this scene, Wuming and Mayu broke out in a cold sweat awkwardly. Mayu did it because she also had the same thought. Wuming did it because he indeed had the same thought. All right. Stop fooling around. Since you're here, there's no harm in telling you when I'm leaving. I'm preparing to leave tonight. Hearing Wuming say this, Ilya and Little Black stopped fooling around. Is it that urgent, Big Brother? Little Black was a little surprised. After all, there's an accident. I have to leave this world as soon as possible, Wuming said solemnly. Big Brother, are you all right? Ilya looked at Wuming worriedly. Don't worry. It's just a little trouble. It won't get in the way. Wuming patted Ilya's head to console her. It's fortunate that we came tonight. Otherwise, Big Brother might have left without saying goodbye, Little Black said joyfully. Wuming could only smile awkwardly. But Big Brother left too suddenly. I don't have any gifts for Big Brother. Ilya touched her trouser pocket a little anxiously. There's no need. It's not like I'm not coming back. I'll solve the problem as soon as possible and come back as soon as possible. Wuming expressed that there was no need to give her any gifts. He made it seem as though he would never see her again. Haha, Ilya, you can't do it. It's just a gift. Watch me. Little Black looked at Ilya proudly. Then she jumped into Wuming's arms and kissed Wuming's left cheek lightly. This prank kiss caused Wuming to freeze awkwardly on the spot. Then Wuming smiled silently. Isn't this better? Turning around, Little Black smiled and looked at Ilya and Mayu, who were dumbfounded and blushing. You, what are you doing? Ilya shouted in panic. Although Mayu didn't say anything, her blushing face and lowered head showed that Mayu's heart wasn't calm. You can also choose not to give this gift. Ilya, I didn't force you. Of course Mayu isn't the same. Little Black looked at Ilya with a teasing expression. And no. Ilya shouted in panic and instantly threw herself into Wuming's embrace. She gently kissed Wuming's right cheek and stopped after tasting it. Then the blushing Ilya pulled Little Black and ran out of the living room. Wait a moment, Ilya? Little Black's sorrowful cry could be heard. Wuming touched his left and right cheeks that were kissed and smiled helplessly. These little guys. Then Wuming noticed that Mayu was looking at his cheek. So Wuming looked at Mayu. What? Mayu wants to do it as well? Wuming teased. And no, I. Mayu blushed and lowered her head. However, Wuming went up and hugged Mayu. He kissed Mayu's forehead lightly. Brother Wuming? Mayu was shocked. Wuming looked into Mayu's eyes and said in detail, This is a reward for the obedient Mayu. I'm very glad that Mayu can become my little sister and bring me joy. Mayu was very touched. She leaned into Wuming's arms with a blissful expression. Me too. I'm very happy to be Brother Wuming's little sister. Chapter 316. After having dinner with the three Lolas and playing for a while, Wuming arranged for them to sleep. At night, Wuming stood alone on the roof, looking at the moon in the distance. Usually, someone will come looking for me at this time, Wuming said without turning his head. Don't you think so, Gil? As the golden particles appeared, Young Gil appeared beside Wu Ming. "Are we leaving, teacher?" Young Gil smiled gently. "Yes, I feel it. Those things are coming. If we don't leave now, we'll be in trouble." Wu Ming was, of course, referring to the high-density black fog, hereinafter referred to as the black mud. Ever since the black dragon-shaped command charm appeared in Wu Ming's hand, Wu Ming vaguely felt that the black mud was moving toward the world he was currently in. Wu Ming was not afraid, but Wu Ming could not and would not allow the black mud to affect Meiyu and the others' daily lives. "Seriously, do you want to come with me?" Wu Ming looked at young Gil. Although young Gil had been missing for the past few days, young Gil had more or less learned about the black mud. After knowing that Wu Ming could trace the other worlds where the black mud was, young Gil suggested that he should go with him. "Of course. Don't forget, you used to take me to other places to play." Gil smiled. Wu Ming could not help but recall what happened in Uruk. Although the Gil in front of him was not the Gilgamesh Wu Ming met, Wu Ming's experience in each parallel world was the same. In other words, young Gil also had the experience of playing with Wu Ming. But Wu Ming estimated that the adult version of Gilgamesh in this world had different adult memories from the Queen Gilgamesh Wu Ming knew. After all, a man and a woman, their experiences were similar, but they could never be the same. "Ah, you were very likable when you were a child." Wu Ming recalled and looked at the moon. "Well, I also have a headache about what I looked like when I grew up. Why did I become like that?" Young Gil looked distressed and looked at Wu Ming helplessly. "Maybe this is the king, my best disciple." "I think so too, my only teacher." The night continued to deepen. The moon emitted soft and bright moonlight, shining on the master and disciple. The next day Meiyu got up early. Meiyu walked to Ilya and Black's room to take a look. Ilya and Xiaohei shouldn't be up yet. After that, Meiyu went to the kitchen and began to prepare breakfast. If it's Brother Wu Ming, he should have left by now. Meiyu was making breakfast absent-mindedly. After making breakfast, Meiyu knocked on Ilya and Xiaohei's door and woke them up. Then Meiyu put the breakfast on the table. When the last plate was placed, Meiyu found a card on the table which was the style of a class card. "It's strange, there's nothing on the table," Meiyu said doubtfully. Meiyu had cleaned the table before placing the breakfast. It was impossible to miss a card, and it was a class card. "I shouldn't have missed it. Also, could it be that Ilya's card accidentally fell here?" Meiyu knew that he was a little absent-minded just now. Perhaps he had missed something. With that in mind, Meiyu picked up the class card. "Caster, magician?" Meiyu looked at the card that depicted a magician wearing a magician's robe, holding a magic book and a staff, and read the words on the card. However, after reading the rank of the card, the caster, magician, rank card actually emitted a golden light, and the whole card was dyed in gold. "This is what the teacher left for you." Suddenly a child's voice came. Meiyu quickly turned around and looked at the owner of the child's voice. "Gilgamesh?" Meiyu was a little surprised. That's right, it was young Gil. Now, young Gil was sitting on a dining chair, holding a wine glass in his hand and taking a sip. Because Wu Ming needed to go back to the root, so Wu Ming asked young Gil to wait for him here. When Wu Ming went to the target world, he would summon young Gil. "You disappeared for a few days, why did you appear after Brother Wu Ming left?" Meiyu asked warily. No matter what, the other party was the most ancient king, the hero King Gilgamesh. Meiyu was right, young Gil went to visit this world out of interest, so he disappeared. "Don't worry, the teacher asked me to give you that card." This was also why Meiyu didn't notice the existence of the class card just now. "Brother Wu Ming gave it to me?" Meiyu looked at the class card in her hand, a little stunned. Because the teacher changed the class card, the saver card was too burdensome for you to use, so Wu Ming chose to seal the power of his caster, magician, class into this empty card, and this card has been refined by the teacher, so it's different from the other class cards. It has supreme power, and the teacher hopes that it can protect you. Then young Gil waved his hand helplessly. "You should be content, Hyun Ryong, who protected the Uruk, protected a little girl. Your value in the teacher's eyes is much more important than the Uruk." "Brother Wu Ming?" Meiyu muttered Wu Ming's name silently, and tears of joy fell from her eyes. "Sigh. Meiyu, why are you crying?" Little Black, who came to the dining room first, saw Meiyu crying and panicked. "Sigh? Meiyu, did Jill Cohen bully you? Tell me, I'll avenge you." Ilya, who came one step later, saw Meiyu crying. She then looked at young Jill, who was sitting beside Meiyu, and instantly took out the ruby that refused to come out from her hair. "Ruby, transform." I'm still sleeping. I played games too late last night. Meiyu is worthy of being from a rich family, and the games she brought are extraordinary. Ruby looked listless. "This is not caused by me, Young Gil waved his hand helplessly, and casually took a sip of the wine in the glass. Sapphire came out from behind Ilya and looked at Mayu. "What's the matter, Lord Mayu?" Because there was no need to hide, Sapphire did not continue to hide in Mayu's hair. "No, it's nothing, I'm just too happy." Mayu turned around. Although she was crying, Mayu showed an extremely happy smile. Sigh. Ilya, Little Black, Ruby, and Sapphire were dumbfounded. "Seriously?" Young Gil complained and turned into golden particles and disappeared from the dining room. Teacher really has an ill-fated relationship. Chapter 317. Inside the Root of Origin, the gigantic body of the Root of Origin moved slightly. The dragon opened its ruby-like eyes, and through those eyes, one could see that the owner of those eyes was still a little confused. That was a sign of a delayed spirit conversion. Soon the dragon spirit was completely awake. "Is it back?" Wuming muttered to himself. Because Wuming did not intend to use a servant's clone to go to the target world, Wuming removed his servant's clone, and prepared to use his main body to go to the target world. Wuming looked at his dragon claw, which was engraved with a black incantation similar to a dragon's. As expected, this incantation followed me. Wuming was worried that the incantation would not appear on his main body, but it seemed that his worries were unfounded. Then Wuming looked at the sparse black mist around him, and a hint of displeasure appeared in his huge dragon eyes. Roar! Wuming opened his huge dragon mouth, and countless bolts of lightning containing the power of origin shot out, instantly destroying all the black mud in Wuming's vision. "Just looking at it makes me unhappy," Wuming said in disdain. At that moment, the incantation on Wuming's dragon claw began to glow. The black light was like a sign of death, illuminating Wuming's huge dragon eyes. "What's this?" Wuming felt as if he was facing a great enemy. Wuming could more or less guess what had happened. Because Wuming came in when there was still a trace of black mud left inside the Root of Origin, the black mud acted like social animals, contacting countless of their own kind to surround Wuming. Coupled with the black incantation on Wuming's hand, the black mud that came to surround Wuming acted like a signal transmitter, and the black mud knew exactly where Wuming was. Perhaps the black mud was wreaking havoc outside the Root of Origin by now. "That's good, it saves me the trouble of looking for you." Wuming's dragon eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. The reason why the Origin Dragon was called the Origin Dragon was because it could only unleash its full strength in the Origin Dragon. It could only be said that it was fortunate that the black mud did not have intelligence and did not know how to protect its source. If Wuming had come to the root with a lot of black mud, Wuming would have had no choice but to run. After all, the black mud could also use origin power. The other origins were chaotic, but this one was filled with gentleness. Wu Ming sat on the platform at the center of the Root of Origin and mobilized all of his origin power. In an instant, the boundless Root of Origin seemed to come alive and became chaotic. However, there were some sparks in the chaos. In an instant, countless black mud poured in from unknown directions, accumulating more and more. At this time, countless bolts of divine lightning burst out from the Origin's chaos and destroyed all of the black mud. The newly arrived black mud also subconsciously used origin power. However, as the saying went, two fists cannot fight four hands. Wuming, who was in the dominant position, constantly destroyed the black mud. The mindless black mud did not know what a temporary retreat was, and all of them surged forward without thinking. Moreover, even when they began to use origin power, it only added a little burden to Wuming. Wuming increased his output, but the black mud still flew toward the flames like moths. Soon, the amount of black mud gradually decreased until the last bit was destroyed by Wuming's lightning. Despite this, Wuming did not feel at ease. Looking at the incantation on the back of his dragon claw, Wuming knew that the black mud was only a part of the problem. Not to mention the problem of the black mud in the other worlds was also a headache. If they coexisted with the ambitious fellows in the other worlds and received the power of origin power, not to mention reaching the great origin, no one would be able to stop them from doing evil. However, Wuming could not casually go out to deal with the great origin. If the black mud invaded when Wuming went out, Wuming would not even have a place to cry. Although it seemed that Wuming dealt with the invading black mud very easily, Wuming mainly relied on his origin power. If the black mud were to stay inside the great origin and Wuming attacked, Wuming would die like the black mud without even knowing how he died. Of course, Wuming would not be a suicide squad like the black mud. Wuming could still retreat. If that's the case, then I can only... Wuming's eyes flashed as he spoke. After a while, after half a day of work, Wuming raised his huge dragon claw and wiped the non-existent sweat. It's done. Now, it was visible to the naked eye that the Great Origin's interior was covered with a layer of membrane. In addition, Wuming's dragon body was covered with countless golden runes. The membrane was a protective measure that Wuming made to prevent the black mud from invading the Great Origin again. It was a membrane filled with origin power. The golden runes were an automatic technique that Wuming set up. Wuming decided to use his servant's method to go to the target world. When the black mud began to invade the Great Origin, the membrane would temporarily block it. After all, the black mud also had origin power. Although it could not be broken through instantly, it was enough to block it for a while. And while the black mud was blocked, the automatic technique that Wuming set up would be activated. Like a programmed automaton, Wuming's main body would automatically start to use origin power to deal with the black mud, and it would also automatically repair the damage to the membrane. Even if it did not work, Wuming could still contact his servant's clone and let his consciousness return to his main body. Although he could also split his consciousness, it would cause considerable damage to the mind, and in the long run he might develop a split personality. Therefore, Wuming did not choose to split his consciousness. Everything is ready. Let's go to the new world. With that, Wuming slowly lay down and closed his eyes. The golden light split from Wuming's body, and just like when he changed classes, a space-time wormhole appeared, and the golden light flew in. And Wuming's main body fell into a deep sleep. A certain parallel world, 1994, Winterwood City, Japan. Near Winterwood City, inside the Great Origin Cave where the Great Holy Grail was. A magic circle was automatically drawn in the Great Holy Grail's Great Origin Cave. As the drawing was completed, the Great Holy Grail's magic power was injected, and the magic circle lit up. A man wearing a pitch-black raincoat and an old-fashioned European-style black top hat stood in the center of the magic circle. The figure moved his legs in pitch-black leather shoes and walked out of the magic circle. Then he exclaimed, "This is the Great Origin Cave." Chapter 318. Job Level, Savor Real Name, Wuming Master, None Attribute, Lawful Good, Ability Points, Strength, A Uncertain, Durability, A Uncertain, Agility, A Uncertain, Magic Power, A Uncertain, Luck, A Uncertain, Relic, A Uncertain, Job Level Skills, Origin Energy EX. Born from the Origin, mastered the method of using the Origin Energy. Evil Nemesis EX, Savior, Savor, is righteous. Once identified by the Savior, Wuming, as the evil party and their actions have affected the world, they will be attacked by the world's energy of the same level. The degree of the attack is enough to kill and cause fatal effects. Old Skills, Uncertain EX, has the ability to change one's job level and attributes at will. This is the convenience of being in the Origin. Miracle, has the ability to use relics that do not belong to the current job level. These relics are not assigned to the current job level. Relic, Divine Sword of Salvation Excalibur, Level, EX Type, Divine Sword of Salvation Distance, Maximum Catch. It has the same name as the Sword of the Lake and it has the same appearance as the Sword of the Lake. It is the amalgamation of the Manchala Formation. It can be broken down into the Manchala Formation. There are countless God relics in it. The Divine Sword has the power to save the world. It can release the lightning of salvation and the light of salvation. 12 powers, God's Killer Level. EX Type, Divine Sword of Salvation Distance. 1 Maximum Catch. 1 There were 12 incarnations of Dragon Seed, Giant, Warrior, Storm, Annihilation, Flood, Vitality, Dependence, Thunder God, Phoenix, Sun, and Magician. Each incarnation was comparable to a noble artifact. It was the upgraded version of the power obtained from killing the gods. Chapter 319. It's Winterwood City, and I was directly summoned by the Great Holy Grail. Wuming looked at the surroundings and said thoughtfully, "That's right, this man wearing a black leather jacket, black leather shoes and a black top hat was Wuming." The reason why Wuming was dressed like this was because Wuming's current class was Assassin. Is my real name Jack the Ripper? Or is it an accident? Wuming felt his own power and said helplessly. After all, the class selection this time was automatically chosen by the Great Holy Grail. For Wuming, although it didn't mean that it didn't matter what class he was, Wuming wouldn't be troubled by the fact that he was an assassin. In Wuming's view, every class had its own benefits, Even the weakest assassin had its own benefits. Although my combat ability is weakened, it's still good to have my aura blocked. After all, I'm here to investigate, not to attack. With that, Wu Ming walked out of the Great Hollow of Winterwood City. Even if it was a parallel world, the structure of the Great Hollow of Yuanzhong Mountain was still the same. However, this world was quite strange. Isn't it a little too peaceful? Wu Ming stood on a high ground and looked at Winterwood City. At this moment, Winterwood City was peaceful. With Wu Ming's eyesight, although he was an assassin, he could still see the scenery of Winterwood City. At this moment, people were coming and going in Winterwood City. Shops were open as usual, people were rushing about as usual, and students were attending classes as usual. It was very peaceful. Wu Ming looked at the black dragon-shaped command seal on his hand and frowned. The seal is also useless, as if there's no black mud in this world. Then Wu Ming turned his head. If I have to say something, it's only because this great holy grail contains a large amount of black mud. However, this black mud doesn't possess the power of source. It's just pure evil. After Wu Ming arrived here, he asked Kalas to examine the great holy grail. Kalas discovered that apart from the pure evil of this world, there was nothing else in the great holy grail. My inspection is flawless. Please don't doubt me, master. A voice came from the black top hat on Wu Ming's head. It was Kalas' cold voice. Kalas was able to change her appearance according to Wu Ming's class. After all, Kalas was the one who changed her appearance into the golden-green dragon horn. I'm sorry, Kalas. I'm not doubting you, Wu Ming apologized with a bitter smile. However, without the black mud, how did the black token bring me here? Wu Ming was distressed. Kalas didn't say anything. She didn't know the truth. Forget it. Let's go check if there's anything special about this world's Winterwood City. After saying that, Wu Ming turned into a black shadow and disappeared. In a Chinese restaurant, Wu Ming sat in his seat, waiting for his order. Although Wu Ming was still wearing a black leather jacket, black leather shoes, and a black top hat, the other people in the restaurant only treated Wu Ming as a weirdo. It didn't affect them much. Soon, Wu Ming's Chinese dishes were served. Wu Ming began to eat heartily. The reason why Wu Ming came back to eat in this restaurant was that he happened to see his own country's dishes in a foreign country. After all, Wu Ming was adopted by an old man in China. Before this, Wu Ming had explored the entire Winterwood City. However, Wu Ming didn't find anything wrong. Soon, Wu Ming finished his meal. No matter how you look at it, it's strange. Wu Ming leaned on the chair and began to talk to himself. Wu Ming, of course, said that there was no special event or trace of the black mud. In any case, the mark on Wu Ming's hand wouldn't lie to Wu Ming, right? The black mud had no consciousness. At this time, a priest came to the restaurant. Boss, a serving of mapo tofu. After saying that, the priest directly sat at the table closest to the door. Master, that person has a sacred mark on his hand. Kalas suddenly said. Wu Ming took a closer look. There was indeed a mark on the back of the priest's hand that looked like a blood clot. Only the qualified magicians chosen by the Great Holy Grail could possess such a thing. A master who didn't summon a servant would possess a stigmata, and when the master summoned a servant, the stigmata would become a command incantation. And the priest seemed to have noticed that someone was observing him. He turned his head to look at Wu Ming's direction. However, all he saw was a table full of Chinese dishes and a stack of Japanese yen. There was no one on the chair. Was it an illusion? The priest was puzzled. But when he saw the mapo tofu on the table, the priest no longer paid attention to that direction. Instead, he focused on the mapo tofu. On the street, Wu Ming pressed down on his black hat and said with some surprise, I didn't expect that priest to be so vigilant. Wu Ming used his assassin's agility to leave the restaurant the moment the priest turned his head. By the way, those Japanese yen were taken by Wu Ming from some rich families. Of course, Wu Ming left some gold as an exchange. According to the information, now should be the time of the Holy Grail War. That person is likely to be one of the masters of this Holy Grail War. Kalas said. Previously, when Wu Ming explored Winterwood City, he found out that the date was 1994. That was the time when the Fourth Holy Grail War began. In Ilya's world, the Holy Grail War was stopped and was never held again. However, it was different in this parallel world. If there were no accidents, the Holy Grail War should be held normally now. Kalas, I suddenly have a new idea. Suddenly Wu Ming smiled. Kalas did not say anything. She knew that her master's bad taste was about to start again. Wu Ming came to the big hole in the Yuzhong mountain. Wu Ming took out some materials from his black ripples and began to draw a magic circle. It was the same magic circle as when Wu Ming came to this world. That's right, Wu-ming decided to summon the heroic spirits to participate in the Holy Grail War. Anyway, he had the command seal, Black Mark, in his hand. The only uncertain part is the Holy Grail War. Maybe someone's wish caused the Black Mud to come, so we have to participate. Wu-ming earnestly said to Kalas. You're just interested, master? Kalas mercilessly ridiculed. How could that be? Isn't this a good opportunity to summon a servant and also summon Gil from Ilia's world? Wu-ming smiled. Okay, let's begin. After saying that, Wu-ming took out a clay plate from the black ripples beside him. This was something that Wu-ming had exchanged with Zelik. Wu-ming let young Gil drop the first blood to facilitate the summoning. Fill it up, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. Cycle after cycle, then 5. However, when it's full, it's time to abandon it. Declare, thou shalt listen to my command, and my life is with thy sword. Answer the call of the Holy Grail. If you are willing to follow this will and this principle, then respond. I hereby swear that I am willing to accomplish all good deeds in the world, and I am willing to exterminate all evil deeds in the world. Thou shalt be the 7 days of the 3 spirits of words, from the wheel of inhibition, the guardian of the Libra. Following Wu-ming's spiritual words, the magic circle glowed, and a violent hurricane swept everything around it. In an instant, the clay plate in Wu-ming's hand glowed. In an instant, a figure appeared in the center of the magic circle. Long time no see, Hyun-ryong, said the figure. Ah. Wu-ming was dumbfounded. Chapter 320. Wu-ming was dumbfounded, but he did summon Gilgamesh. Looking at the figure that didn't look like a young Gil walking out of the dust, Wu-ming was silent. Although this Gilgamesh was an adult version, and although he couldn't rule out the possibility that young Gil had used a class card to fuse with himself and return to his adult form, but the Gilgamesh standing in front of Wu-ming was a woman, and there was no doubt that this Gilgamesh was the Gilgamesh that Wu-ming met. There was no doubt about it. At this moment, the female Gilgamesh was somewhat similar to when Angelica used the Gilgamesh class card. Her lower body was covered in golden armor, and a red cloak fluttered from her waist. Her upper body was still naked, and the red lines were stuck to the queen's sparkling waist. Her upper body was only covered by a black unlined shirt that could only cover her breasts. Her neck and wrists were adorned with golden accessories, and only one side had shoulder armor and gauntlets. Her ears were adorned with large golden earrings, and her hair was spread out. Her delicate and beautiful face, coupled with her arrogant red eyes looking at Wu-ming, slowly gave off the aura of a queen. How boring, Hyun-ryong. Have you fallen to the point of being an assassin? The female Gilgamesh, or rather the female version, mocked Wu-ming. Well, although I've thought about summoning other Gilgamesh, at least I still have a trace of young Gilgamesh's blood. Why? Wu-ming rubbed his forehead with one hand and said rather helplessly. Just another young version of this king, and you want to compete with this king? Ridiculous. This king has already sent you back to the constellation of heroes. Queen Gil said domineeringly. Forget it. Wu-ming gave up struggling. After a while, Wu-ming learned that when Wu-ming summoned the servant, young Gil did receive the message and was excited to come to this world. However, Wu-ming got one thing wrong, and that was Queen Sparkle. Although the clay tablet contained young Gil's blood and was suitable for summoning young Gil, the Wu-ming itself was a very good artifact for the Queen of Summoning, Glint. Even if you came to a parallel world, changed your class and added a curse, your nature will not change. This king has already made up his mind. This king won't come out even if you don't act as a holy relic to summon him. However, if it's you, no one can win against this king. The queen responded to Wu-ming domineeringly. No. As expected of my direct disciple. Aha. Wu-ming laughed awkwardly. However, compared to Queen Sparkle or the adult version of Gilgamesh, the young Gil or the old version, the returned king, of Gilgamesh was easier to get along with. The adult version of Gilgamesh's personality was a bit bad. A minute of silence for the poor Gil. Since I've already summoned you, that's it? I originally wanted to summon Gil who possessed a class card, but now it seems that you and I have formed a contract. Feeling that his magic was connected to Queen Sparkle and was supplying her, Wu-ming felt helpless. Fortunately, my assassin class isn't considered orthodox. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to pay for your magic consumption. As the top heroic spirit existence, Gilgamesh's consumption was naturally huge. If an assassin were to supply Queen Sparkle with magic, wouldn't it be draining her magic and sending her back to the heroic spirit palace? It's your honor to be able to let this king come, Hyun-ryong. Even if you are this king's teacher, you should be proud. Queen Sparkle said proudly, her small face was shining with unusual happiness. Didn't you say that you snatched it? Of course Wuming didn't say this sentence. After all, he knew his own disciple. If he said that, Queen Sparkle would be angry again. Gil, you should understand the current situation. Wuming cleaned up the traces on the scene. After all, summoning a servant here couldn't be seen by others. In any case, he had to respect the rules of the Holy Grail War. Even if it's you, you should call this king king. But seeing that you are this king's teacher's clone, this king allows you to call this king by his name. Queen Sparkle's face was arrogant. She looked at Wuming with a "you can be proud" look. That's why it's hard to get along with Jill when she's at her peak. Wuming sighed helplessly. This king has learned the specific situation from another young version of this king. It's about some black mud. With this king here, Hyunryong, you just have to lie down obediently. Wuming didn't say anything about the arrogant Queen Sparkle. Anyway, he had already gotten used to it. It was just that he couldn't get used to it for a while. Now that the black mud hasn't appeared, I suspect that someone used the Great Holy Grail, so I decided to participate in this Holy Grail War. This is also the reason why I summoned you. After all, in order to become a master, one must summon a servant. Therefore, Wuming chose to summon young Gil and used the black dragon-shaped mark on his hand as a command spell. If he encountered the other 7 servants and masters, he could just say that he was an extra cheater. As a result, Wuming really became a master and occupied a spot. In fact, Wuming was worried about whether he would also occupy a spot. After all, he was summoned using the Great Holy Grail ritual. With the Holy Grail's nature, who knows if there would be any accidents? I always feel that if there is an accident, it must be caused by the master. Kalis complained. It shouldn't be. Wuming was a little uncertain. He didn't find any abnormalities when he came to this world, and the magicians were also very stable. Strictly speaking, he was the abnormal one. Well, since you're already involved, then let's go through with it. Wuming smiled, but this smile was particularly gloomy. Kalis, I haven't seen you for a long time. At this time, Queen Blink heard Kalis's voice and greeted Wuming's top hat. I'm deeply honored, Hero King. Kalis said very politely. After all, Kalis was not Wuming. Towards a great king, Kalis was still very respectful. Well, now I have to find a place to stay, so it's convenient for the next action. Wuming said and began to walk toward the big hole. Then you do well, Hyunryong. This king will be here waiting for your good news. Queen Blink said, turned into golden particles and disappeared. This was the spiritual form of a servant. Not only Gilgamesh could do it, but also Wuming could do it. After all, Wuming was now in the state of a servant transformed by the Great Holy Grail. Then you stay here first, I'll go to Winterwood City to buy a house. Wuming waved his hand. As Wuming moved toward the downtown of Winterwood City, Kalis' voice came from Wuming's head. I always feel that the future is worrying. Chapter 321. At night, Wuming brought Gilgamesh to a house. Located in the center of the bustling Winterwood City, it was a nice small villa with a courtyard. This was a place where residents were going abroad. Because they were in a hurry to go abroad, they didn't pack anything. The owner of the house left in a hurry with his suitcase. With Gilgamesh's temper, Wuming would definitely say, how can a place where civilians live bear the arrival of this king? Therefore, Wuming quickly found someone to decorate it during the day and bought some high-end furniture. This time he went to the Yuanzong mountain cave to pick up Gilgamesh. You made this king wait for so long. Do you know your crime, Hyunryong? Gilgamesh stared at Wuming unhappily. Well, when you get home, be obedient or I'll starve you. Wuming warned Gilgamesh. You really dare to say that, Hyunryong? Why aren't you hurrying to cook for this prince? Don't make this king wait for too long. With that, Gilgamesh swung his beautiful long hair, left Wuming and walked straight into the small villa. Wuming shrugged helplessly, then walked in and began to cook with the ingredients he bought before. At the table, Gilgamesh gracefully tasted red wine and enjoyed the sumptuous dishes prepared by Wuming. Hyunryong, the food you make is delicious. Gilgamesh took another sip of red wine and praised. It's good that you are satisfied. By the way, Gil, do you have any wish to make for the Holy Grail? And it's just the Holy Grail. It's mine to begin with. I only joined the Holy Grail War to take back what belongs to me, Gilgamesh responded to Wuming's words domineeringly. Yes, Gil is the best, Wuming said perfunctorily. What do you mean by that? Are you patronizing this king? Gilgamesh looked at Wuming with dissatisfaction. Then what about you, Hyunryong? If it weren't for the black mud, would you have chosen to participate in the Holy Grail War? If it's me, I probably won't, Wu Ming said after thinking for a while. After all, I already have a Holy Grail. Moreover, the Holy Grail that I want to fulfill will not be able to fulfill my wish. Wu Ming smiled indifferently. After hearing Wu Ming's words, Gilgamesh scoffed at the Holy Grail's wish. That's true. That Holy Grail is said to be an omnipotent wishing machine, but in reality, it's not omnipotent at all. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it's a fake. Wu Ming did not comment on Gilgamesh's mockery of the Holy Grail. Instead, he talked about another matter. By the way, I will go out and investigate the other trainee masters and servants later. I may come back very late. You should sleep first. Wu Ming put down the tableware and wiped the corner of his mouth. Got it? Remember not to lose anything. Even if you are already so inferior, you are still this king's teacher. This king doesn't want to lose his master the next day. Gilgamesh put down the wine glass and said indifferently. But Wu Ming, who understood Gilgamesh, naturally knew that Gilgamesh was concerned about him. As expected of Gilgamesh, his Tsundra nature is very obvious. Wu Ming squinted his eyes and smiled at Gilgamesh. Oh, are you kidding me? This king is the most ancient king, the hero king, Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh's face instantly turned red. It was unknown whether it was because of anger or because he was pampered. Yes, I know. Remember to put the plate in the sink. I will come back later to wash it. But if you can help me wash it, then I will thank the heavens. Wu Ming said with a smile. Then he stood up and walked toward the door. Tisk, you actually let this king do such a thing? What kind of joke is this? Gilgamesh looked at Wu Ming's back as he sat on the chair angrily. My purpose for participating in the Holy Grail War. Isn't it to see you guys? At this moment, the king's face revealed his human side. Now the king was living more realistically than anyone else. There was basically no one on the streets at night. Only a few street lamps illuminated the darkness on the empty streets. A stray cat was lying on the chair resting. Suddenly, a black shadow flashed under the street lamp. The stray cat was so scared that it jumped and ran away. Wu Ming stood on the street lamp and looked at the city. Wu Ming thought about Gilgamesh. Since he could make Gilgamesh swear that he would not answer unless he summoned, and even snatched the summoning quota from young Gil this time. In addition, Wu Ming saw the emotions in Gilgamesh's eyes. Wu Ming smiled helplessly. Looks like Gil's dependence on me has become an obsession. No matter what, this Gilgamesh was just a little girl. Compared to the male version of Gilgamesh, Queen Sparkle still had the gentleness of a woman. Wu Ming left with Enkidu after Enkidu's death. At that time, Gilgamesh was still grieving over the death of his good friend. In addition, his master had also left. This was a little cruel for Gil. No wonder the history books recorded that Gilgamesh abandoned the Uruk after his good friend's death and began his journey to find the grass of immortality. This was a huge blow to Gil. You're just like Artoria, Gil? Wu Ming smiled and did not say anything. After all, she was a king. She was not as weak as Wu Ming thought. Wu Ming's figure flashed. As an afterimage appeared, Wu Ming disappeared from the street lamp and began his investigation. The first place to investigate was the overseer of the Holy Grail War, the Holy Church. Wu Ming did not choose to hide his identity as a servant and directly walked into the Holy Church's Winterwood City branch. As soon as he entered the church, he saw a priest praying to the cross. Of course, this priest was not the Mapo priest that Wu Ming met before, but a priest who looked old. The priest who was praying heard someone coming in and turned his head. It was a rather old but energetic man. From the marks on his palm, it could be seen that he was a martial artist. According to the results of Wu Ming's investigation, this quite capable old man was called Yan Fengli. You are a servant? Yan Fengli saw Wu Ming. At first he was surprised, but then he calmed down. Is it your master who wants to ask the overseer to answer his doubts? Yan Fengli said calmly. The master had doubts and sent a servant to the overseer of the Holy Church to answer his doubts. This kind of example was not unheard of. Yes, my master wants to know how many servants have gathered in this city, and whether we can start the war. Wu Ming pretended to be very indifferent and said, So that's the case, can't wait to start the war? Yan Fengli was relieved. There are 4 servants gathered in this city, Lancer, Rider, Caster, and Berserker. Including you, there are already 5 servants. Yan Fengli said, Thank you. After that, Wu Ming turned into a shadow and disappeared. However, Yan Fengli's face was filled with confusion. The memory just now, I can't remember it at all. Is it the servant's noble phantasm or skill? Yan Fengli was seriously thinking about this strange phenomenon. Chapter 322. Yan Fengli's ability was not bad. He was worthy of being a supervisor twice. Wu-Ming used Jack the Ripper's skill, Intelligence Erase, to erase all the information about Wu-Ming in Yan Fengli's mind. Intelligence Erase B. At the end of the battle, including encounter, the memory of witnesses and opponents, recorded information about Jack's ability, real name, and appearance will disappear. But it can't fool scientific products such as cameras. Wu-Ming didn't find anything like a camera inside the Holy Church, so Wu-Ming didn't choose to use mist to cover his appearance. Instead, he chose to use Intelligence Erase. Wu-Ming left the Holy Church and came to the street. Lancer, Rider, Caster, Berserker, and me Assassin, does this mean that the other party didn't notice me in Gilgamesh's archer? Wu-Ming stood in the shadow and analyzed what Yan Fengli said. In addition to the 6 of us, there is still Saber with the best attributes. I don't know if she hasn't come yet or if she's hiding. Wu-Ming thought for a moment and didn't think about it anymore. Well, in that case, let's leave it at that. For the time being, I can't figure out the reason for this world's abnormality. After a while, Wu-Ming returned to the small villa. The house was dark and the light was not turned on. Bam. Wu-Ming turned on the light and then Queen's voice came. Too slow. Golden particles began to gather on the sofa, and Gilgamesh's figure appeared. You haven't slept yet, Gil. Wu-Ming sat next to Gilgamesh and said with a little surprise. What's there to be surprised about? As a servant, this king doesn't need to sleep. But you, this king has been waiting for you to come back. Can't you even say a word of thanks? Gilgamesh said proudly. Indeed, Gilgamesh was right. A servant only needed to enter spiritual form to replace sleep, and as long as there was enough mana or food, the servant could always be active. So, my queen, have you put the tableware on the table in the sink? Wu-Ming cast a smile at Gilgamesh. This king has already taken care of such a trivial matter. Gilgamesh crossed his arms in front of his chest and said rather disdainfully. Then go to sleep, no matter what, girls should go to bed early. Wu-Ming patted Gilgamesh's head as if he was treating a child. And Wu-Ming was ready to accept Gilgamesh's anger, but Gilgamesh didn't get angry. Wu-Ming removed his hand from Gilgamesh's head and looked at Gilgamesh, who didn't do anything. Gilgamesh looked at Wu-Ming and turned into golden particles and disappeared. This is a reward for you. Don't be too proud, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh's voice came from the air and then disappeared. Really, there should be a limit to arrogance. Wu-Ming shook his head helplessly and then walked into the kitchen. When Wu-Ming wanted to wash the dishes, he found that there was no tableware in the sink, but it was clean. Next to the sink, a few plates and bowls were neatly stacked together. It looked like someone had already washed them. Although the kitchen sink was in a mess, it was obvious that it was done by someone who didn't wash dishes for a long time. Really? Wu-Ming laughed. He didn't expect Queen Flash to take his joke seriously. Wu-Ming really didn't expect Gil to wash the dishes. However, Wu-Ming bet that the male version of Adult Flash wouldn't do that. Only his Queen Flash would be arrogant. Since I have nothing to do, I might as well go investigate the enemy. After that, Wu-Ming left the small mansion. Gilgamesh revealed himself and looked at the direction Wu-Ming left. He muttered and then entered the spirit state. Boring? The next morning, Wu-Ming returned to the small mansion. Gilgamesh came into contact with the spirit state and revealed himself. Did you go to investigate for information, Hyunryong? Gilgamesh returned to her good queen posture and said domineeringly. Yes, information is very important. Wu-Ming nodded and went to the sofa to sit down. You already have this king. What are you still investigating for? If this king wanted, he could have ended the Holy Grail War last night. Gilgamesh also came to his exclusive seat and sat down. It was a rather tasteful and luxurious seat. It was also left behind by the owner of this house. Because he left in a hurry, Wu-Ming directly spent money to buy some of the more valuable things. At first, the owner of this house didn't want to buy it. After all, it was also an antique. However, because he was in a hurry and left in a hurry, this seat was successfully traded by Wu-Ming at a price that satisfied both parties. Then, it was occupied by Gilgamesh. Although Wu-Ming bought it for Gil, sitting on her luxurious seat, Queen Twinkle crossed her legs and supported her chin with one hand, silently looking at Wu-Ming. After all, there is an old saying that goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Wu-Ming poured a glass of wine for Gilgamesh and handed it to Her Majesty Queen, who was crossing her legs. So, what information did you find out, Hyunryong? Gilgamesh took the transparent goblet and took a sip. Then, she looked at Wu Ming as if her anger had subsided. You also know that the Holy Grail War was started by the so-called three families. While talking, Wu Ming also poured himself a glass of wine. The three families are composed of the Enosaka family, the Mesotome family, and the House of Einstein Barons. Last night, I explored the local residences of these three families and found two servants. One is a male servant suspected of being a king in the Enosaka family, and the other is a female servant with snake breath in the Mesotome family. After taking a sip of wine, Wu Ming continued. There is no one in the castle of the House of Einstein Barons in Winterwood City. They should have not yet arrived in Winterwood City. Plus, there is a supervisor of the Holy Church. It is inferred that the servant of the House of Einstein Barons should be a saber, swordsman. The servants of the Mesotome family and the Enosaka family are not caster or berserker. As for why, I will tell you later. In short, these two should be lancer and rider. Wu Ming put down the glass and then took out a map from nowhere. And here I found traces of berserker. Wu Ming pointed to the place on the edge of Winterwood City, and that place was the Emiya Mansion. Wu Ming went to the Emiya Mansion with the idea of seeing Shiro Emiya in this world. As a result, he accidentally found multiple magic barriers and traces of berserker. There is no way a big guy who seems to have no sense of reason can't hide. There is no need to guess, and this is the berserker that Wu Ming knows, Hercules. When Wu Ming found berserker, he was waiting in the courtyard of the Emiya Mansion. Although Wu Ming did not find the master, Wu Ming could almost guess. Magician killer, Emiya Kiritsugu. Wu Ming narrowed his eyes. And then, did you fight with berserker? Gilgamesh shook the glass and asked with interest. Of course not, I just accidentally found the trace of berserker and then quickly retreated, but the other side should have found me. Wu Ming remembered the guy who wanted to become a partner of justice and could not help but frown. A partner of justice is as cunning as a fox. Chapter 323. Although Wu Ming knew Emiya Kiritsugu from another world, she was a righteous partner, who would sacrifice a small number of people to save the majority of people. Wu Ming sneered. Your smile is really pleasant, Hyunryong, but this king likes it. Gilgamesh praised Wu Ming. Wu Ming reacted and rubbed his cheeks. Is it a negative effect caused by spiritual pollution? Then Wu Ming continued. I only met these servants once and then they quickly left me, and I also met Castor here. That's why I judged that the two servants of the Enosaka family and Mitsuhiro family were not Castor and Berserker. Wu Ming pointed to the Winterwood Hotel in Winterwood City. Listening to you, did you fight with Castor? Gilgamesh said. As a king, Gilgamesh could naturally understand the meaning of Wu Ming's words. Well, and the other party is my acquaintance, it's really ironic. Wu Ming smiled sarcastically. Then why don't you tell me about your ironic experience to help this king pass the time? Gilgamesh casually drank a mouthful of wine and leaned back in his seat. Then Wu Ming began to recall. After leaving the Emiya mansion, Wu Ming found a street lamp and stopped. I should have thought about it. How can there be no Emiya Kiritsugu in Winterwood City? Wu Ming, wearing a black leather coat and a top hat, stood on the street lamp with his legs straight, looking into the distance. Lancer, lancer, archer, archer, rider, cavalry, assassin, assassin, and berserker, berserker, have all been confirmed. Saber, swordsman, is probably not here yet, so only caster, magician, is left. Then Wu Ming looked at the Winterwood Hotel, which was the largest hotel in Winterwood City. Basically, some foreigners would stay here. Let's try our luck. Wu Ming's figure disappeared. In the Winterwood Hotel, a man with short blonde hair in his 20s was talking with a woman beside him. It seemed that the two were lovers. Suddenly, blue particles appeared around the two of them, and the blue particles turned into a young man with short blue hair, wearing a classical costume and holding a staff. What's going on, Castor? The man asked. Master, there is a servant coming, and the sensing technique I set up in the distance is working. The blue-haired man said lazily. So, are you sure you can kill the other party? The man with short blonde hair said to kill. It seemed that he was a very arrogant person. The other party is just an assassin, no problem, but I'm afraid that the other party will sneak in. The blue-haired man meant that if the assassin who specialized in dealing with the master sneaked in when he was not there, then it would be troublesome. Don't worry, I still have the moon marrow elixir. The man with short blonde hair took out a few test tubes with some silver-white liquid in them. That's all right, I'm leaving, master. After that, the blue-haired man disappeared. Is it okay, Kenneth? A woman asked with some concern. Although she did not like her fiancé very much, she did not hate him. It was okay to be worried. Don't worry, Sora. Let's not talk about my moon marrow elixir. He is a famous servant. The man named Kenneth said proudly as if he was praising himself. Well, that's good. The woman named Sora nodded. Then let me see the glory of Kuchurin. Kenneth looked at the place where the blue-haired man disappeared and said carefully. On the other side, Wuming, who had arrived at Tuki Hotel, suddenly felt that something was wrong. Is there an idle person dispersing technique around? It seems that I've been discovered. Although he was discovered, Wuming did not panic. As a qualified assassin, Jack the Ripper was undoubtedly qualified. Not only was his aura concealment level A+, but he also had support skills and noble phantoms, such as intelligence concealment, Fog Knight's murder, dark fog, and so on. For an assassin, it was simply a success. This was also why Jack the Ripper, even if he was an assassin, could cause great headaches to both the red and black sides. It seems that this caster is quite a powerful character to be able to detect me without me noticing. Wuming stood in front of the Winterwood Hotel and did not hide. He just waited for the arrival of the other party. Then you guessed wrong. It's just a little trick, senior. Suddenly, a familiar and frivolous voice was heard. This voice? Is it Cuculin? Wuming felt a little helpless. Could it be that this was a battle between different classes to mock the battle between Serence and Cuculin? Sure enough, senior, it's really you. With the appearance of the blue particles, Cuculin's figure appeared in front of Wuming. It's really God's will, Cuculin? Wuming looked at Cuculin indifferently. Although in Wuming's memory, Cuculin was a freak in blue tights, but in front of him, Cuculin was a mage in a robe and holding a wooden scepter. You've changed a lot. Wuming joked. I have the adaptability of a caster, magician, but I didn't expect you to become an assassin. Did something happen to you after you left Connaught? Cuculin asked in a comfortable tone, as if he was chatting with a good friend whom he hadn't seen for many years. I did experience a lot. Speaking of which, were you killed by Maeve's plot? Wuming was concerned about Cuculin's death. In Wuming's history, Cuculin was summoned by Maeve. Cuculin was also a disciple of Skaha and fought with his fellow apprentice, Verdya. In the end, Cuculin won a Pyrrhic victory. Then he was plotted against by a bard invited by Maeve and was killed by his own gun. Ah yes, I was plotted against by Maeve. In the end I was killed by my own gun. How ironic. Although Cuculin said so, he did not show much anger. Instead, he calmly accepted his own death. Senior, you shouldn't be dead. I heard some rumors about you from my teacher. What Cuculin meant was that Wuming, as the powerful body of the Dragon of Origin, should not die. I'm not dead, but this time I participated in the Holy Grail War because I have some things to investigate. Wuming nodded. Oh, so that means it's fine even if I don't obtain the Holy Grail? What a coincidence. I don't need the Holy Grail, but my master does. Although he's quite annoying, he's still my master. I'll help him out a little. Then Cuculin flashed his staff. Come and fight with me, Sira. Chapter 324. Wuming finally knew why Cuculin joined the Holy Grail War. This guy simply wanted to fight against the heroes of history. Looking at Cuculin, who was rushing over with his staff raised, Wuming helplessly picked up his weapon as an assassin, two unusually gorgeous daggers. Wuming didn't complain about why these two daggers were so beautiful. Why would an assassin care about whether the weapon was beautiful or not? Ahem, at least it was easy to use. Wuming swung his daggers and met Cuculin, who was attacking with his staff. Wuming and Cuculin were really two weirdos. Originally they both used guns, but one turned into a wooden stick and the other into a dagger. Needless to say, the wooden stick was considered a long weapon and could be used as a spear. However, Wuming had never used a dagger or similar weapon before. However, bang bang bang, the dagger and the staff collided with each other, making a sound of steel colliding. Wuming and Cuculin's figures were constantly changing, waving their arms at a speed invisible to ordinary people, constantly attacking each other. Wuming usually used a sword or a gun. Although Wuming had never used a dagger, don't forget that Wuming's teacher was the queen of the demon realm, the god slayer who had trained countless heroes, Skaha. Daggers and other short weapons were naturally on Skaha's schedule to train Wuming. Moreover, Wuming was gradually suppressing Cuculin. With a feint, Cuculin escaped from Wuming's entanglement. I can only say that you are indeed my senior. Even after becoming an assassin, your attributes are still not low. Cuculin smiled helplessly. You, on the other hand, have your attributes dropped so much because you became a caster? Wuming held his daggers with both hands and stood not far away from Cuculin. Through the fight, Silent Wonder could clearly sense that Cuculin's strength and durability were quite low, at least much lower than Silent Wonder's current attributes. He estimated that Cuculin's strength and durability were either D or E, while Silent Wonder, as Assassin Jack the Ripper, had strength and durability of C level. Only dexterity can compete with me, and this is because you used the Loon Rune to strengthen yourself. Yes, as the first magic that Wu Ming learned, the Loon magic, was naturally very familiar with it. Although Wu Ming didn't use it much, it didn't mean that Wu Ming wasn't familiar with the Loon magic. As a mere caster, it was impossible for his dexterity attribute to be high enough to reach a level. In addition, Wu Ming was familiar with the Loon Rune, so he naturally inferred that Cuculin used the Loon Rune. Ah yes, you are indeed my senior. I did use the Loon Rune to strengthen my attributes, but it can only strengthen strength, durability, and dexterity to a level. If I want to fight with you, I can't do it without dexterity. Maybe I will be out of the game in the next second. Cuculin touched his head, not annoyed that Wu Ming had exposed his secret. Obviously you were summoned as a caster. Not only did you not ambush in your workshop, but you also wanted to fight me in close combat. I'm really convinced by your muscle head. Wu Ming said rather helplessly. Well, since my senior said so, then I will fight with you as a caster. Cuculin waved his hand in the direction of Wu Ming, and a light appeared under Wu Ming's feet. A rather simple and unadorned rune came into sight. This was the Loon Rune that Cuculin had set up during the close combat with Wu Ming, and now it was activated. You know I'm your senior. How could I not notice such an obvious trap? Wu Ming said as he accelerated and jumped away from the light. The moment Wu Ming left, a violent explosion occurred at the position of the rune. The flames of the explosion spread to Wu Ming, who had not completely escaped from the explosion range. The flames raged in the atmosphere, absorbing oxygen and burning fiercely. Wu Ming, on the other hand, disappeared into the flames. Of course, this little trick naturally couldn't kill Wu Ming, and Cuculin doubted whether it could cause any harm to Wu Ming. After all, I also appeared as an assassin. This is the beginning of the Holy Grail War. See you next time, Cuculin. Wu Ming's voice came out from the atmosphere and then disappeared. Under the cover of the flame explosion, Wu Ming's A+ level aura made Cuculin lose sight of Wu Ming. Well, that's it. With that, Cuculin turned into blue particles and entered the state of spiritualization. That's it, I simply fought a few times with the caster and then retreated. Wu Ming put down his glass and leaned on the sofa. Gilgamesh, on the other hand, looked at Wu Ming with interest. I didn't expect the caster to be your junior. Then again, this junior is related to your identity in other myths. I haven't heard that the Uruk Hyunryong has a junior. Because of interest, Gilgamesh began to shake his legs. Looking at Gilgamesh's shaking legs, Wu Ming said that he couldn't see anything from the armor, so he simply stopped looking. After all, I'm also a traveler. It's not surprising that I know people in other areas. Wu Ming said casually. So, do you have a plan? Gilgamesh asked. Gilgamesh didn't believe that Hyunryong, who had investigated almost all the enemies, didn't have a plan. The Uruk Hyunryong's reputation was not only obtained by protecting the people. As the closest person to Hyunryong, Gilgamesh naturally knew that Hyunryong had a very high strategy. Moreover, this time Wu Ming appeared in the world as an assassin. Wu Ming, who didn't have the ability to break through, would definitely choose to use wisdom. However, this time Gilgamesh guessed wrong. I didn't prepare a plan, I just simply investigated the enemy. Wu Ming waved his hand tiredly. After all, you said that if you wanted to, you could end the Holy Grail War in one night. The key is that there's no need at all. Wu Ming smiled indifferently as he leaned on the sofa. After Wu Ming finished speaking, Gilgamesh frowned. What do you mean? Gilgamesh asked. Do you still remember why I came to this world? Wu Ming hinted. Gilgamesh suddenly realized. After all, Gilgamesh came to this world in the form of occupying a spot in the Holy Grail War. It was inevitable that he would pay a little attention to the Holy Grail War. I almost forgot. You came to this world because of that strange black mud. Yes, Wu Ming's original purpose was the black mud with origin power, and he participated in the Holy Grail War only because Wu Ming hadn't discovered the black mud for the time being. Therefore, he suspected that there was something fishy about the Holy Grail War, so he participated. In other words, I just have to wait quietly, wait for the final victor, and then investigate the truth about the black mud. Chapter 325. Of course, although Wu Ming said that he would wait quietly, Wu Ming wasn't someone who could just sit around and do nothing, and neither was Gilgamesh. Therefore Wu-ming brought Gilgamesh to the amusement park. Well, amusement park, important things must be said twice. Gilgamesh looked like he was holding back his anger, looked at the amusement park in front of him, then looked at the smiling Wu-ming and said, "You actually let this king come to a place for children. You really have guts. Do you think this king is a child, Hyunryong?" However, Wu-ming just waved his hand. "What does it matter? After all, I watched you grow up and I can be considered your adoptive father. What's wrong with a father bringing his daughter to the amusement park?" Wu-ming said seriously. Of course, it would be perfect if Gilgamesh didn't stop him from opening the gate of Babylon. Wu-ming held down Gilgamesh, who was about to open the gate of Babylon, and smiled. Ma Gilgamesh, just treat this as playing with me. You can also experience the feelings of the people while you're at it. Besides, you've never been to an amusement park before, right? Wu-ming calmly advised, not at all worried that Gilgamesh would pull out his sword and stab him. "Seeing that you are my teacher, this king will accompany you." Gilgamesh shook off Wu-ming's hand that was pressing down on her arm, with a "I'm being merciful, come and thank me" look on her face. Yes, thank you for taking the time to accompany me to experience the people's feelings." In Wu-ming's view, Gilgamesh wasn't angry at all. The gate of Babylon only needed Gilgamesh's consciousness to open. Raising his hand was just a habitual action. In other words, even if Wu-ming was holding Gilgamesh's hand, Gilgamesh could still open the gate of Babylon if he wanted to. This showed that Gilgamesh wasn't angry. "Then please change your clothes. After all, your current appearance is not suitable for experiencing the people's feelings." Wu-ming pointed to the people around him. They looked at Gilgamesh as if they were looking at a girl who liked to cosplay. In order to avoid trouble, Wu-ming had already changed his clothes into ordinary casual clothes. He was wearing a white shirt, a black jacket, black pants, and a pair of casual shoes. He wore a cap on his black hair, and his red eyes were emitting a captivating light. This light was deep and distant, and it was quite attractive. He looked quite handsome. Gilgamesh, on the other hand, was still wearing his golden armor, exposing his abdomen. Although it was reasonable to dress like Gilgamesh at the entrance of the amusement park, everyone's attention was still on Gilgamesh's supreme appearance. As a person with 2/3 divinity and 1/3 humanity, Gilgamesh was naturally blessed by the gods. His IQ, appearance, and so on were not comparable to ordinary people at all. Thinking about young Jill, he had a skill called Beautiful Boy in his attribute. Beautiful Boy, CIT, was a display of the skill of a beautiful young man that made people want to protect him. Although it had a magic effect that could charm people regardless of gender, it could be avoided by magic skills. Even if there was no magic resistance, the effect could be mitigated if there was resistance. Although Beautiful Boy's skill was only C rank, having this skill meant that his appearance was heaven-defying. And the effect could be said to be even more effective on Shiny Girl. At this moment, it was not an exaggeration to say that Gilgamesh was a peerless beauty. These mongrel cultivators, bastards. How dare they look straight at this king? Gilgamesh seemed to be really angry. Forget it, after all, it's just to experience the people's feelings. It's not like they will lose a piece of meat. By the way, it's better to quickly change your outfit so that you can avoid trouble." Wu-ming comforted Gilgamesh. After all, if Gilgamesh felt humiliated and took out his sword, then they would be finished directly. That's true. I'll do as you say today." Gilgamesh's body began to emit light. Gilgamesh wanted to change his outfit here. After Wu-ming saw it, he directly pulled Gilgamesh and ran away. When the passers-by saw the blonde beauty's boyfriend pulling the beauty away, they only felt a little regretful that there was no beauty to see. Then they began to busy themselves with their own things. A moment later, Gilgamesh and Wu-ming returned to the entrance of the amusement park. Why does this king have to hide and change his outfit? This king is the hero king, Gilgamesh. If he wants to hide, it should be these bastards. Gilgamesh said unhappily. After all, Wu-ming suddenly pulled Gilgamesh's hand. Wu-ming was still wondering why Gilgamesh did not get angry, but now it seemed that his anger was delayed. Well, don't forget the hidden rules of the Holy Grail War. Just put up with it. Wu-ming wiped the non-existent cold sweat. Gilgamesh looked at his hand that was pulled by Wu-ming, and then looked at Wu-ming in a good mood. This king forgives your rudeness. Then, as if he thought of something, Gilgamesh looked at Wu-ming slyly. So, Hyunryong, what do you think of this king's outfit? Gilgamesh said as he moved closer to Wu-ming. Wu-ming looked at Gilgamesh's current outfit. The upper body was a white shirt with a black woman's jacket, but it still could not hide the queen's towering breasts. The lower body was a short skirt, black silk stockings, and a pair of high boots, which showed off the queen's slender legs. Long golden hair without any impurities was casually spread out and draped over her back. Her beautiful face was breathtaking, and her red pupils, similar to Wu Ming's, exuded a lofty arrogance. She had the proper queen style. However, aren't you wearing the same type of clothes as me? Wu Ming was slightly puzzled. The two of them were dressed like a couple, and with their red pupils, if it were not for their different hair colors, they would be siblings or siblings. What's wrong with that? You're my teacher, there's nothing wrong with wearing the same clothes as my teacher. Gilgamesh frowned slightly, and a trace of displeasure appeared on his peerless face. That's not a big deal, but the problem is that it's even more eye-catching now. Wu Ming said helplessly and pointed at the crowd around them. Gilgamesh looked around and realized that the people who were busy with their own things had all stopped what they were doing, and were staring blankly at Wu Ming and Gilgamesh. To be precise, they were looking at Gilgamesh alone. This group of mongrel cultivators, trash. In an instant, golden ripples appeared, and countless relics appeared. Wait a minute. Wu Ming's panicked voice resounded through the sky. Chapter 326. In the amusement park, Gilgamesh walked while licking his ice cream, while Wu Ming followed Gilgamesh with a tired face. At the entrance of the amusement park, Wu Ming stopped Gilgamesh's noble phantasm and used a simple hypnosis magic to hypnotize everyone at the scene and erase their memories. Then Wu Ming cast a simple magic to reduce his presence on Gilgamesh and quickly ran away with Nyang Shanshan. Although Wu Ming as Jack the Ripper shouldn't be able to use magic due to his class, but he couldn't stop Wu Ming, the cheater. The servant's body was Wu Ming's avatar in the Great Source. All the noble phantasm was on the main body, and the noble phantasm on the servant's body was only the avatar of Wu Ming's noble phantasm. The assassin class was because the Great Holy Grail captured Wu Ming's adaptability to that class, so it recreated Jack the Ripper's noble phantasm. But because of Wu Ming's cheating, the power of Source, Wu Ming's Jack the Ripper was not pure Jack the Ripper, but a new version of Jack the Ripper that was mixed with some other things. That was why Wu Ming's assassin class had some attributes, skills, and noble phantasm that didn't belong to Jack the Ripper. However, cheating on a large scale was not advisable. Even if it was Wu Ming, he couldn't violate the rules of the servant class too much. Therefore Wu Ming cheated a little so that Jack the Ripper, who originally couldn't use magic, could use some small magic. Needless to say, the magic of dispel, suggestion, and reducing one's presence was really useful. After that, Wu Ming bought an ice cream for Jisama to comfort Jisama's dignity. Gilgamesh, who was walking in front, looked at Wu Ming, who was quite tired, thought for a moment, and threw the ice cream in his hand behind him. Naturally, Wu Ming was able to react in time and caught it in one go. Gil, what are you doing? Wu Ming looked at the ice cream somewhat puzzled. This king has decided to reward you properly. I'll leave the leftover ice cream to you. Gilgamesh swung his elegant blonde hair and said in a tone that brooked no refusal. Are you kidding me? Wu Ming looked at the half-melted ice cream helplessly. What, you're not satisfied? Gilgamesh turned around and stared at Wu Ming with her beautiful red eyes. Wu Ming's eyes revealed the meaning of, if you say no, you're done for. How could that be? Wu Ming scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Then, is there anything for this king to play? Gilgamesh snorted, turned her head and scanned the entire amusement park. Wu Ming thought for a moment, then proposed. Since you, Gil, haven't played before, then let us all experience it. Well, let this king see what's so attractive about these boring devices. With that said, Gilgamesh took Wu Ming's hand and walked towards a certain project. The sign in front of them had the words roller coaster written on it. Wait a minute, don't pull me. Shut up, this is your punishment for pulling this king's hand just now. Yes, your majesty. On the roller coaster that had already started, Wu Ming enjoyed the cool breeze brought by the roller coaster and couldn't help but think of Meiyu and the others. He still remembered when Wu Ming brought Meiyu, Ilya and Little Black to the amusement park to play. Ilya and Meiyu were instigated by Little Black and were half forced to play on the roller coaster. As a result, when the roller coaster started, Ilya was so scared that she cried and screamed. Meiyu was fine, but her face was also pale. In the end, during the roller coaster ride, Ilya and Meiyu gradually got used to it, scaring Little Black quite a bit. Looking at Wu Ming's smiling face, Gilgamesh, who was sitting with Wu Ming, frowned but didn't say anything. After that, Wu Ming and Gilgamesh tried the various projects in the amusement park one by one. In the blink of an eye, it was already afternoon and the amusement park was closed. Because the two of them came at noon, there wasn't enough time. At the entrance of the closed amusement park, Wuming looked happy as if he was reminiscing about the past. Gilgamesh, on the other hand, looked bored. Those things are only suitable for civilians to play. Like the roller coaster, that speed can't even compare to Vimana. I really don't know what's there to be happy about. Hearing Gilgamesh's complaint, Wuming, who was walking side by side with Gilgamesh, looked at Gilgamesh. Well, Gil is the hero king. It's normal for him to be bored by these projects. To be honest, compared to the exciting facilities in the amusement park, combat can stimulate Gilgamesh's desire more. This is a fact. Gilgamesh, who has fully adapted to combat and surprise attacks, can't feel excited by the amusement park's projects. Although that's true, but Gil was also scared in the haunted house before. Wuming smiled mischievously. Because he saw that Gilgamesh didn't care much about the projects, Wuming used the opportunity to enter the haunted house to personally scare Gilgamesh. It can only be said that Gilgamesh still has the weakness of a young girl. Although Gilgamesh only frowned at the time, but from the release of the Gate of Babylon, it can be seen that Gilgamesh was really scared at that time. Cheap joke, this king is particularly annoying. Gilgamesh said proudly. Well, experiencing all kinds of emotions, this is what a king needs to do. Didn't I teach you? Wuming smiled, then pulled Gilgamesh's hand. Let's go home and prepare an unprecedented feast for our long-awaited disciple. Humph. For you to hold this king's hand without permission, this king will not care this time, but if this dinner tonight is not to this king's liking, then you are finished, Hyunryong. Yes, I know, let's go, my king. The setting sun shone on the man and woman, the two people's shadows were getting longer and longer, farther and farther. At night, Wuming turned into a night walker and shuttled through the streets. Soon Wuming stopped at the house on the side of the street. Because Wuming felt a battle intent, that's right, that's the battle intent of a servant. Suddenly, on the top of the building where Wuming was, on the street lamp beside the house, golden particles appeared, and Gilgamesh, who had recovered his golden armor, appeared. It's just a hyena's howl, why do you want to go? Gilgamesh said rather disdainfully. It's not too much to go and have a look, the last saber, swordsman, is probably here, this battle intent is probably the invitation, sent by saber, swordsman, I'm very interested. Wuming pressed his top hat and said calmly. To be able to see a good show, this king doesn't mind being a spectator for once. With that said, Gilgamesh turned into golden particles and disappeared in spirit form. Wuming activated the aura barrier and quickly went to the place where the battle intent originated, Winterwood Beach. Chapter 327. Wuming activated his aura block and hid near the beach, while Gilgamesh hid behind a street lamp in his spiritual form. Wuming looked at the center of the beach. There was a blonde woman in black armor with a black mask on her face and a black holy sword in her hand. There was no doubt that this was Saber, swordsman, but it was still someone Wuming was familiar with. Artoria. Wuming frowned. Although Saber did not match Artoria's attribute, dark, but whether it was the dark holy sword in her hand or the familiar face under the mask, it all proved that she was indeed the Artoria he knew. It can't be wrong. That is Artoria. After carefully examining the dark holy sword in her hand, Wuming confirmed. But how did Artoria become like that? Wuming felt a little sad. Artoria was Wuming's first disciple, and Wuming liked this little girl, especially compared to the current Gil. However, the Artoria who appeared in front of Wuming at this moment was exuding a strong dark aura, and Wuming did not find anyone else around Artoria. Wuming suspected that Artoria's dark was caused by the destruction of her country. Wuming had checked, and with the British Silver Dragon, which was the historical record of Wuming's Britain, Artoria's country was destroyed in the end. With Wuming in Britain, the people lived and worked in peace. However, because of Wuming's disappearance, although Artoria did not send out knights to search for the Holy Grail like crazy, she still sent out a lot of knights. The knights who cared about Wuming were also very willing to search for the Holy Grail. However, due to Wuming's departure, Merlin's being trapped in Avalon, he deserved it, and Artoria's lack of power, the ambitious dukes began to target Artoria. Because of Guinevere's longing for Wuming, Morgan and the nobles used this as a fuse to put Guinevere on trial. After all, that era did not allow someone like Guinevere to exist. With the nobles as the leader and the church as support, the trial for Guinevere was carried out. Although the Knight of the Lake, Lancelot, forced the princess to escape, Guinevere, who was condemned, came back and was willing to be punished. Artoria was exhausted and could not go against the era and the rumors of the people, so she had no choice but to burn Guinevere at the stake. The historical records were not very detailed. Lancelot robbed the execution ground and fought with the few remaining knights. Although he managed to escape, he was severely injured. The other knights suffered the same fate and suffered heavy casualties. The knight's faith, the departure of the British Silver Dragon, the disappearance of the Archmage Merlin, Artoria's inaction, Morgan's secret instigation, Guinevere's incident, the Knights of the Round Table killing each other, and the disappointment in the king. All of these led to the destruction of Britain. Artoria's expedition to Rome led to the rebellion of the knight Mordred, and the conspiracy of the nobles led by Morgan led to the Battle of Camlan. Originally, Silent Wonder thought that Artoria had turned into a dark form because of this, but it turned out that this was not the case. The thick darkness that clung to Artoria's body was like the evil of this world in the Eastwood Holy Grail. That's right. Wuming had previously investigated the interior of the Holy Grail in Winterwood City. The magic in the Holy Grail had all turned into the evil of this world, and its form was some black mud. Artoria's body was full of the evil of this world as if she had been soaking in it for a long time. What the hell is going on? Does it have something to do with the Great Holy Grail in Winterwood City? After all, Wuming was an assassin without magic, so Wuming did not set up any detection spell in the Great Holy Grail in Winterwood City. However, Wuming had been checking the Great Holy Grail from time to time for the past 2 days. After all, the evil of this world in the Great Holy Grail was also a threat to Winterwood City. If it was released, it would be troublesome. Wuming became serious when he saw Artoria's dark form. It seems that I have to check the Great Holy Grail later, Wuming thought. At this time, Artoria, who was standing on the beach, opened her mouth. "You're here, you rascals. Since you're here, don't hide. You'll lose the chance to fight me. I, the Night King Artoria Pendragon, disdain to be associated with you." Sure enough, it's Yulia. Wuming was completely sure when he heard Artoria's voice. Artoria said something that was unclear, but Wuming knew one thing, that was, Artoria was trying to anger the servants who had come to the beach. In Wuming's perception, including Artoria and Wuming himself, there were a total of 7 servants here. That was why Artoria was provoking them. It seems that Artoria wants to kill everyone in one go. She's quite arrogant, just like Gil. Wuming smiled and looked at Artoria, who was standing in the center of the stage. So, who will show up for King Arthur's provocation? Wuming waited with interest. So that's how it is, the famous King Arthur. Then I can't lose my reputation. Accompanied by a deep voice, a brown figure appeared. The clothes of the West Asian style looked particularly cool. A pair of decorative horns were worn on his head. His strong facial features and strong physique showed that this person was strong. "I'm also a king. This time I'm here as a rider. Please advise me, spare." The muscular rider was quite polite. He was not arrogant like the other kings. "Are you the only one rider? Are the others just cowards?" Artoria shouted loudly to provoke the other servants who were hiding. And it seemed that Artoria's provocation worked. In just one night, there were 2 more mongrel cultivators, scumbags, proclaiming themselves kings. "You really don't put this king in your eyes." Gilgamesh removed his spiritual form and showed his figure, standing on the street lamp and despising Artoria and Ryder. I can't continue to hide." A rather frivolous voice came, blue particles condensed, and Cuculin appeared wearing a sage robe. "Yo, I'm Castor, here at Saber's call." Looking at Cuculin's sloppy appearance, Wuming helplessly touched his forehead. I knew it would be these 2 who would come out. After all, Gilgamesh's dignity did not allow others to provoke him again and again. Plus, the 2 kings provoked Gilgamesh, the only king. Gilgamesh would naturally show up. And Cuculin did not show up in the first place. Wuming guessed that it had something to do with his master. Of course, as a caster, his mind calmed down a little. It's quite interesting. Let's not talk about Assassin and Berserker. Lancer also doesn't show up? Anyway, there are 3 knights. Artoria said without arrogance. "Thank you." Chapter 328. Thank you for your respect. A relaxed lowly voice was heard. A young girl wearing a cloak and holding a scythe in her hand came out of spiritual form and appeared in front of everyone. The large cloak covered most of the girl's delicate body. Her long purple hair was braided behind her head, and the front part of her long hair casually hung down from the cloak. Although the cloak covered most of the girl's body, one could still vaguely see the girl's petite body. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was a young girl. "Oh, Lancer, it's a little girl." Are you interested in a cup of tea? It could only be said that Cuculin was really good at flirting with women. After all, Cuculin was still Cuculin. Whether it was a lancer or a caster, he would not change. Please allow me to refuse, pervert. Lancer refused without hesitation. She made a clear voice like a newborn baby. Very good, except for Berserker and Assassin. Is everyone here? Artoria nodded with satisfaction and put her hands on the invisible holy sword in front of her. Well then, let us decide the victor tonight, heroes. After that, Artoria suddenly released her magical power. The surging magical power overturned the sand on the beach. It looked quite domineering. You really dare to say that, Saber? Cuculin said, not to be outdone. But it's not a bad idea. Ryder crossed her arms in front of her chest and said rather sullenly, "Umph." Gilgamesh did not say anything. He just looked down with a look of amusement. Lancer, on the other hand, was silent. Apparently, she agreed with Spare's proposal. That's right, it saves us a lot of trouble. Are you here, assassin? Come out and fight with me. I know you can't be restrained by a mere assassin. Cuculin shouted to the surrounding. The other servants seemed to be interested in the assassin and were not in a hurry to start a fight. Seriously, this idiot, is it because Sira remembered me? Wuming, who was hiding in the dark, said with a headache. After Wuming left Cuculin, the intelligence erase skill was indeed activated. Cuculin did not remember any information about assassin. However, this did not stop Cuculin from knowing Wuming's other identity. He was the eldest disciple of the Queen of the Demonic Realm, Cuculin Sr., the warrior of Connaught, and the Tyrannosaurus of Queen Maeve. Information erasure only targeted information about assassin, which meant that it targeted information about Jack the Ripper. Because Cuculin had seen Wuming before, even if he lost any information about Jack the Ripper, he still knew that assassin was his senior. It was the same as Wuming knowing that Castor was Cuculin. Both sides only remembered the information of the other side when they were holding guns. For now, both sides only knew who the other side was. Of course, Wuming, who had learned the Loon magic trick, naturally had an advantage over Cuculin. After that, Wuming also lost interest in continuing to hide. He gently jumped and revealed himself. You are really an idiot, Castor, Wuming complained. Ha, anyway, I am very satisfied to be able to fight with you. Cuculin was not angry, but laughed and looked at Wuming full of fighting spirit. So, let me introduce myself first. I am Jack the Ripper. This time I came here as an assassin. Please advise me. Wuming did not pay attention to Cuculin. Instead, he introduced himself and even exposed his real name. Ryder frowned as if he was not satisfied that a murderer could be on the same stage as them. However, after thinking about it, he was an assassin after all. It could be said that his courage was commendable. Although I admire you directly, it is undoubtedly extremely stupid for you to expose yourself as an assassin, Ryder said dully. As for the others, Lancer did not speak much at the beginning and did not say anything. Gilgamesh was very dissatisfied with Ryder's evaluation of Wuming and looked at Ryder with murderous eyes. As for Artoria, since Wuming appeared, she fell into silence. So, you are the assassin of this Holy Grail war, Artoria said without understanding the meaning, but she had been staring at Wuming with a complicated look. Wuming certainly knew why Artoria was looking at him like that. Without thinking, Artoria also recognized his identity. That saber over there, he's this king's possession, teacher. Put away your invasive gaze. Gilgamesh saw that Artoria's eyes were a little strange when she looked at Wuming, so he said rather grumpily, Is that so? Archer, although I don't know how you came to this conclusion, but he is my possession, knight. Artoria stared at Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh did not show any weakness and stared back at Artoria. Hey, what's going on? Why do I feel that Saber and Archer are about to fight because of you? Cuculin said jokingly. Wuming's response was only silence. Could this be the legendary Shiraba? Wuming thought with some uncertainty, and he even swallowed a mouthful of saliva. It's none of your business, Castor. Do you want to leave as soon as possible? Wuming stared at Cuculin fiercely. However, Cuculin picked up his staff and spun it twice. I can't wait. Then he looked at Wuming full of fighting spirit. As a last resort, 2 daggers suddenly appeared in Wuming's vertical hands, which slipped out from Wuming's sleeves. Then let me teach you a good lesson. On the other side, Lancer looked at Ryder, who was now vacant. What, do you want to fight me? Ryder looked at Lancer calmly. And at this moment, rustle, rustle, rustle. A roar that did not seem to be human came. Holding a strange stone weapon that looked like an axe and a knife, the 3-meter-tall little giant roared and jumped into the beach. Rustle, rustle, Russell. He roared again, turned his eyes to Lancer and rushed up. Tiske, the hero who killed the monster and the monster who was killed by the hero were swapped. How ironic, Lancer said softly and rushed up to Berserker. I say, aren't you guys looking down on me a little too much? In an instant, Ryder jumped fiercely and instantly jumped between Berserker and Lancer. Lancer was rational enough to stop, but the irrational Berserker would not do the same. Berserker raised the axe in his hand and slammed it down toward Ryder. Looking at the way his muscles were tied, he must be a servant with high strength or even monster strength attribute skills. Ryder would be injured if he did not die. But, clank. A long bone stick like an elephant's trunk stretched out from the ground and blocked Berserker's attack. Russell. Russell. Berserker roared angrily because his attack was blocked. As expected of the irrational Berserker. In fact, I'm more suitable for this class, Ryder said lightly. Then, the bone colossus swung its trunk and flung Berserker away in an unbelievable manner. Then Ryder looked at Lancer and Lancer raised her scythe vigilantly. Since I can't fight with my old enemy, I'll fight with you guys. Ryder showed a tyrannical smile, his dark face revealed his big white teeth. Looking at the Berserker's smile, Lancer seemed to know why Ryder said that he was suitable for the Berserker class. Chapter 329. The timeline was pushed back to the day. Enosaka House. The manager of Winterwood City, Enosaka Tashiomi, elegantly held a glass of red wine with one hand behind his back. He stood in front of the window and looked into the distance. His eyebrows were full of haze. On the back of his hand that was holding the red wine, 3 scarlet incantations were engraved like mysterious circles. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Please come in, Enosaka Tashiomi said. Creak. The door opened with the sound of the door opening. A young priest walked in. If Wuming was here he would definitely recognize him. He was the priest that Wuming met at the Chinese restaurant that day. His name was Yen Feng Kiri, the son of the old priest that Wuming met at the church in Winterwood City. Kiri, what's the matter? Enosaka Tashiomi turned around and looked. The haze between his eyebrows disappeared a lot. Sensei, a suspected servant was found near Tabaki Amusement Park. Yen Feng Kiri said very respectfully. Is it confirmed? Enosaka Tashiomi said seriously. Yes, according to my father's information, it is currently confirmed to be Archer. It is very likely to be a king. Yen Feng Kiri said carefully, afraid to make his sensei angry. Sure enough, after Enosaka Tashiomi heard it, the haze between his eyebrows gathered again. It was taken by others. I was too careless. I didn't expect that in addition to the world's first snake fossil, there would be a holy relic that could make the most ancient king appear. Enosaka Tashiomi said rather angrily. However, this is also expected. Calm down. But in an instant, Enosaka Tashiomi calmed down. After all, the Enosaka family's motto was to always be elegant. However, Yen Feng Kiri had a feeling that Enosaka Tashiomi was holding on. That's right. Teacher has successfully summoned another king. Yen Feng and Chili flattered from the side. However, Enosaka Tashiomi's expression at the moment was somewhat helpless. In an instant, brown particles appeared. Ryder dispelled his spiritual form and stood beside Enosaka Tashiomi. I know, you are disappointed to summon me. Ryder's dull voice came. No. How could that be, my king? Tashiomi Inaka bowed to Ryder. After all, your original target was the ancient king. I'm nothing compared to the ancient king. I can't even compare to my rival, the one from the Macedonian kingdom, Ryder said in a low voice, although it seemed like he was belittling himself. Your Majesty, how could Tashiomi Inaka not know? The king in front of him was indeed inferior to the oldest king, and the difference was huge. You don't have to say too much. The only thing I can do is to help you obtain victory in the Holy Grail War and fulfill my own wish of being able to fight against my old enemy once again. After saying that, Ryder's mind went blank as he thought about his formidable enemy. After saying that, Ryder's spirit form disappeared. After noticing that Ryder had left the room, Yen Fengili was slightly puzzled. Teacher, since the king is weak, why did you summon this king? Taking a look at Yen Feng Qi, Tashimi turned his head and looked into the distance again. Qi Li Ryder's combat power is indeed inferior to the ancient king, but don't underestimate him. Tashiomi Inaka maintained his smile. Yen Feng Qi Li still didn't understand, but he knew that at least Ryder wasn't as mediocre as his appearance suggested. The most important thing is that Rider is very obedient. Yen Fengqili suddenly understood. Toshiomi Inaka continued to smile as he looked into the distance. The Holy Grail? Amito residence. In the house that was completely normal, Lancer sat on the sofa and watched TV. After a while, a soft and gentle voice came. That Sister Anna, the food is ready. Come and eat together. A black-haired loli with energetic eyes stuck her head out and looked at Lancer, who was sitting on the sofa. The black-haired loli was Sakura Inaka. Because she was adopted by the Amito family, she changed her name to Sakura Madu. Okay, I know. Anna said faintly and sat at the table with Sakura Madu. Although servants didn't need to eat, Lancer still ate like an ordinary person to make his little master more relaxed. Sakura Madu looked at Lancer, who buried his head in eating, then looked at the command seal on the back of her hand and smiled. I'm so happy to be able to meet Sister Anna, Sakura Madu said. However, the young Sakura Madu didn't notice that Lancer, who was sitting opposite Sakura Madu, was shocked, but he quickly returned to normal. After dinner, Sakura Madu took the initiative to clean up the dishes. Then, Sister Anna, I'll go to the basement later and clean it up, Sakura Madu said softly. This was because Tong Ying had been doing this for the past few days. She had been cleaning the rocks. The basement is full of stones. I'll go to the basement to clean up all the stones. Suddenly Lancer said. Is that okay? I want to let Sister Anna rest more. Sister Anna saved me. I can do these things. Sister Anna just needs to participate in the Holy Grail War. Sakura Madu said worriedly and then looked at Lancer with a smile. Lancer couldn't help but look at Sakura Madu and remembered the scene when he was summoned. Countless insects were rolling over. A skinny and terrifying old man threw Sakura Madu into the insect pile, and a man struggled to summon a servant. However, Lancer found that he was summoned by Sakura Madu, but the summoning magic was provided by that man. Gagaga. Yinya, I didn't think that your death could be useful. Very well, then let Sakura fight in your place. The skinny and terrifying old man made a strange laugh. However, swoosh. With the flash of the sword, Sakura Madu, who was not transformed by the insects, found that the squirming insects stopped moving. Suddenly, Tanjing opened her eyes, which had been shut in fright, and looked at the cloaked young lady in front of her. Sister, are you here to save me? Sakura Madu's little face was crying and looked at Lancer blankly. Yes, my name is Anna. Lancer looked at Sakura Madu's crying face and was slightly moved. Gagaga. Unknown servant, I think it's better if you cooperate with me. This way you and I can get the Holy Grail. The skinny and terrifying old man was obviously a magician, but he was not afraid of the dangerous weapon called servant at all. Lancer glanced at the old man and held Sakura Madu in his arms. Then, the sickle in his hand moved, and the old man was instantly dismembered. Gagaga. Unknown servant, you are indeed strong, but this is my magic workshop. Since you don't want to cooperate, then be devoured by my insects. The old man's hoarse and terrifying voice came from all around. In an instant, countless insects ran out of nowhere and rushed to Lancer. Lancer held Sakura Madu in one hand and covered her face, trying not to let Sakura Madu see these insects. Then, Lancer directly took off the hood of his cloak, and two golden pupils like a horizontal cuboid looked at these insects. In an instant, countless things that were seen by this pair of eyes were petrified. What? Magic eye? And it's a gem? Then, in the old man's surprised voice, all the basement was petrified. Gagaga. Do you think you can kill me like this? Too naive. I won't be polite and will take your pair of demonic eyes. Although everything in the basement was petrified, the old man's voice still echoed in the basement. Is that so? Lancer said faintly. Then, he raised the sickle in his hand and slashed at the man who summoned him before. What's going on? How did you find me? A fat and disgusting insect fell out of the man's heart. It had to be said that the servant summoned at the cost of his own life was indeed powerful. Lancer easily sensed something hidden in the dead man's heart. Goodbye. Lancer looked at the fat insect with his magic eye. Lancer's calm voice was full of serenity. No. How can this be? My trace. The voice stopped abruptly and the fat insect was petrified. Lancer held Sakura Madu and walked step by step toward the basement door. Bang. When he walked near the statue of the fat insect, the statue broke. Chapter 330. After coming back to his senses, Lancer glanced at Tanjing. You don't have to do that anymore. Have a good rest. After all, you are my master. Lancer said lightly and turned his head away. He didn't dare to look at Sakura Madu. Sakura Madu froze for a moment, then showed a smile. I like Anna, Nasen the most. Sakura Madu said and threw herself into Lancer's arms. Lancer hugged Sakura Madu and looked at Sakura Madu's smiling face. He was stunned for a moment and hugged Sakura Madu. I will protect you, Sakura. Amiya Mansion. Amiya Kiritsugu cleaned the gun and performed the daily maintenance. Skillfully disassembled, skillfully installed, and with a few clicks, the gun that was originally disassembled was reassembled. Then a woman came in. What's wrong, Mommy? Amiya Kiritsugu asked without looking back. Mommy could be regarded as his most trusted person, so there was no need to be vigilant. Berserker seems to have found the enemy, it should be assassin. The woman named Mommy Q said. Amiya Kiritsugu frowned. Although Amiya Kiritsugu didn't want to use this place as a stronghold, it was just a temporary base, but he didn't expect it to be discovered by the enemy servants so quickly. It seems that assassin has a unique ability in detection. Amiya Kiritsugu stood up. Wuming expressed his helplessness. He just wanted to come back and have a look. Let Berserker be the bait and see if it can lead the enemy away. Amiya Kiritsugu said and picked up the gun and equipped it. Yes. Mommy Q went out. Then she looked at the red mark on the back of her hand. The mark was quite eye-catching. It was 3 strange command seals. Amiya Kiritsugu wore gloves to cover the mark. Soon Takeo Juyu returned. Did something happen? Amiya Kiritsugu asked. No, assassin retreated by herself, Takeo Kuyu said. Hurry up and leave this place. Find another base. Amiya Kiritsugu frowned. Yes. Amiya Kiritsugu took Kuyu Mamie and the spiritualized berserker to find a new base. Because he wasn't sure if there was an assassin following them, Amiya Kiritsugu arranged a simple detection technique around them. Although it might not be useful against assassin, it was better than nothing. After taking a break, Amiya Kiritsugu lit a cigarette. Kiritsugu, madam? Kuyutake said worriedly. If nothing goes wrong, we'll arrive soon. Amiya Kiritsugu puffed out a mouthful of smoke. It was obvious that he was an old smoker. Then I'll go to the airport to check. Amiya Kiritsugu nodded, and then Takeo Kuyutake left. Only Amiya Kiritsugu was left in the room. It's just that I always have a bad feeling. After a while, Takeo Kuyutake came back anxiously. Not good, Kiritsugu, something happened to madam. Amiya Kiritsugu closed his eyes helplessly. At night, Amiya Kiritsugu took Takeo Kuyutake to the beach. According to Takeo Kuyutake's report, Saber came here as soon as they got off the plane. Amiya Kiritsugu came alone to a tall building with a panoramic view of the beach. Takeo Kuyutake lurked near the beach with the spiritualized berserker. Picking up the sniper rifle, Amiya Kiritsugu saw Saber. An unknown black armor covered Saber's whole body, and a faint black mist spread from Saber's body. Only Saber's master, Amiya Kiritsugu's wife, Alice Phil, was missing. Saber is different from before, Ali disappeared, what's going on? Amiya Kiritsugu said rather irritably. Yes, Saber's master was Alice Phil, not Amiya Kiritsugu. The House of Einstein Barons wanted to hire the magician killer Amiya Kiritsugu to carry out this Holy Grail war. Because of money, Amiya Kiritsugu accepted the hire and married into the House of Einstein Barons. After a few years of getting along, Amiya Kiritsugu and Alice Phil had sparks of love, and the two had children. However, when summoning servants a few days ago, Alice Phil was suddenly chosen by the Holy Grail, and a stigmata appeared on her hand. Amiya Kiritsugu had been chosen a long time ago, and a stigmata appeared on his hand when he married into the House of Einstein Barons. Therefore, the head of the House of Einstein Barons, Ahad, let the two of them summon servants together. This could be regarded as cheating, but because of this, the House of Einstein Barons had 2 servants, Saber with the best attributes and Berserker with the strongest combat power. In this way, Amiya Kiritsugu chose to take Berserker, who was not rational and easy to control, to come to Winterwood in Japan in advance and set up an ambush in advance, and Alice Phil came to Winterwood with Saber later. However, according to Kuyu Mamiya's report, Saber got off the plane alone, and there was no trace of Alice Phil beside her. And Saber also changed from the original Noble Night King to the current appearance. Ali, where did you go? Amiya Kiritsugu murmured. In any case, Amiya Kiritsugu only had one goal, to win the Holy Grail War. Looking at the Night King began to provoke the surrounding servants. One after another servants appeared, and even assassin appeared. In that case, Mamiya, let Berserker also participate in the chaos. Amiya Kiritsugu said to the communication device. After all, Amiya Kiritsugu was not a magician who relied on servants. His goal was the master of these servants. Yes. Kuyu Mamiya's voice came from the other side of the communication device. Because of Amiya Kiritsugu's instructions, Kuyu Mamiya could also command Berserker. Seeing Berserker break into the 6 servants, Amiya Kiritsugu picked up the sniper rifle. Except for those special servants, the servants could not be far away from the master, and the other masters must be hiding in the surroundings, near the beach. What Amiya Kiritsugu wanted to do now was to use the 7 servants to lure out the master's traces. Amiya Kiritsugu, who knew Berserker's strength, was not worried that Berserker would have an accident. At worst he could use the command seal. After all, Berserker was not rational, and there was no need to use the command seal to contain Berserker. At the same time, Sakura Madu was now hiding inside a container on the beach. Although she was afraid, Sakura Madu still looked at Lancer in the distance through the gap of the door. "You hide inside, no matter what happens, don't come out." This was Lancer's first words to Sakura Madu, and Sakura Madu remembered it firmly. "Anane-san." Sakura Madu anxiously held her small hand with the command seal and said anxiously. Of course this was for Sakura Madu as a child, but for Kenneth as a magician it was different. He was very hidden. Kenneth and Sora were in a house not far from the beach, and the owner of the house had been hypnotized by Kenneth. Through the familiar, Kenneth could clearly see the big battlefield of the 7 servants. "Is it really okay to let Castor get involved like this, Kenneth?" Sora naturally also had a familiar, and she could also see the scuffle on the beach. After all, the servants of the other masters have already appeared, and Castor also said that he is suitable for the battlefield, plus I am the head of the house of Akipalud, naturally I can't lose the name of the aristocracy. Kenneth said proudly. "As long as you are happy." Sora said indifferently. Although Castor was indeed handsome, Sora was not the kind of person who would casually fall in love with a dead person. She was a proud noble. At this time the situation on the battlefield changed. Chapter 331. Wuming and Cuculin fought fiercely, but Wuming was gradually losing ground. "Not bad, you guy," Wuming said provocatively, and then suddenly separated from Castor. "Well, after all, this is also a Loon Rune trick. Don't say I cheated, brother." Cuculin waved his flaming staff a few times and looked at Wuming proudly. Yes, using the Loon Rune to strengthen his weapon, and then using the Loon Rune to increase his dexterity to a speed comparable to Wuming's, Cuculin could be said to be suppressing Wuming. After all, the attributes brought by the assassin rank are still too weak, especially in a frontal battle, Wuming said helplessly as he swung the dagger in his hand. Same here, same here. How nice would it be if I could use a gun right now? Compared to magic, I still prefer using a gun." Cuculin looked at Wuming with a wicked smile. "In that case, don't blame me for cheating, Cuculin." Wuming smiled, and the 2 daggers in his hands disappeared. Then a black ripple opened beside Wuming, and in an instant, Wuming inserted his hand into it. "Black ripple? Is this me?" Wuming had the same teacher, so Cuculin naturally knew him very well. Silence had a portable space made of Loon runes, and almost all of his treasures were stored in this space. This was a story passed down in Ireland. Many people didn't know the details, but Cuculin knew that if he was willing to work hard, the so-called Loon rune space could be created. Yes, this is the space where my treasures are stored and I can use the weapons inside. Saying so, a smile appeared on his face, but Cuculin felt that this smile was ridiculing him. Whoosh! Wuming pulled out a long spear from the black ripples. The long spear made swishing sounds in the air. "The spear of the world tree, I knew it." Cuculin secretly smacked his lips, with a "I should have known" look on his face. "Don't say that I cheated, this is the benefit of the undead." That's right, Wuming had taken out the spear of the world tree Yggdrasil. Wuming meant that the undead could create a clone and turn it into a servant, and it would not restrict itself according to the rank. Tiske, wouldn't that make you a lancer with an assassin rank? Cuculin protested. That was right. This was also the reason why Wuming insisted on keeping the Dragonist relic. All of his weapons and items were inside. This is not the case. My ability value is still assassin's ability value. My skills and relics are also assassins. At best, I can only say that I am an assassin with a long spear. Wuming was not wrong. At this moment, Wuming's ability value, skills and relics were all assassin Jack the Rippers. Well, take this, Castor. With Wuming's shout, the white dragon spear swept towards Cuculin. Damn it. Don't underestimate me, this is part of the fun. Cuchulain was not angry. Instead he was delighted. He waved his flaming staff and met the swimming dragon spear. At this time, countless explosions were heard, and the storm caused by the explosions stopped both of them. While Cuchulain and Wuming were fighting, Rider, Lancer and Berserker were fighting. At this moment, Rider was standing on a small giant elephant. Countless skeletons poured out of the ground and swept towards Lancer and Berserker. After all, Berserker was not rational. Even if his attributes were quite good, Berserker only cared about the countless skeletons in front of him. However, each of the skeletons could be restored after being broken apart. Rider stood on the giant bone elephant, looked at Berserker indifferently, shook his head and then looked at Lancer. After all, Lancer was also unable to fight against 4 hands with 2 fists. In the face of the skeleton army that appeared almost all the time, Lancer was also barely able to resist. Enosaka Residence. As Enosaka Residence was not far from the beach, Toshimi Enosaka did not need to go there. Instead, he released his familiar to watch Rider's battle on the beach at home. Yen Fengqi stood respectfully beside Toshimi Enosaka and also released his familiar to observe. Chili, you have a lot of doubts, right? Toshimi Enosaka asked elegantly. Yes, sensei. That king is also here. Are you so assured to let Rider cause trouble? Yen Fengqi said. That is a king. He has self-respect. Don't worry, Chili. If anything happens, I will use the command spell to summon Rider back. Also, don't underestimate Rider. He is an existence that can be compared to the Conqueror King. Although he is not Archer's opponent, the Holy Grail War is not only a test of servants, but also a battle between magicians. Yen Fengqi Enosaka understood Toshimi Enosaka's words. Then, sensei, I will go and prepare. How about it? Yen Fengqi Enosaka asked respectfully. Okay, go. Yen Fengqi Enosaka nodded and left. After Yen Fengqi Enosaka left, Toshimi Enosaka's face was gloomy. The reason he let Rider go was because Rider was almost abandoned by Toshimi Enosaka. After all, in front of the king, all servants were ants. The only way was to make a move on the master. I want to see who can summon him before me. I, Toshimi Enosaka, will not be merciful to such a nameless person. However, if Toshimi Enosaka knew that Archer's master was assassin, who knows how happy he would be back on the battlefield. Rider looked at Lancer. In his perception, all the soldiers that were hit by Lancer were unable to recover. A weapon that can restrain immortality? Rider looked at Lancer's scythe and said. His soldiers all had strong immortality and indestructibility. The only disadvantage was that they could be restrained by weapons or attributes that could restrain immortality. It seems that you are not a simple person, Lancer. Rider commented. But don't think that my soldiers are too simple. With that said, the soldiers that attacked Lancer began to change. All the soldiers that were about to be hit by Lancer's scythe split themselves along the incision of the scythe and then instantly reformed. Lancer's scythe went through them. Lancer was shocked by the strange scene and was attacked by the reorganized soldiers. Bang! Lancer was heavily hit and flew out. Every soldier was the best of the best. Their strength was generally at the strength of a C class, and some had even reached B class. Lancer quickly got up and rubbed his stomach. He looked at the soldiers that had surrounded him with a complicated expression. Then all of you will turn into stone, Lancer said faintly. He then put his hand on his hat and was about to take off his hood. At this time, countless explosions were heard. Rider and Lancer both looked at the place where the explosions occurred. Berserker was the only one who was still attacking the skeleton soldiers. Chapter 332. Artoria and Gilgamesh were glaring at each other. Even when the others had started fighting, they were still glaring at each other. How vile. This king thought you were a clown. I didn't expect you to be a thief. Do you really want to steal this king's possession, teacher, so badly? Gilgamesh said arrogantly. I don't know where you got that conclusion from, but he is my possession, knight. This will never change. You, on the other hand, are a king? Don't you dare tell me your real name? Artoria sneered at Gilgamesh. You call yourself king in front of this king. You want to steal this king's possession in front of him. You don't know this king's name in front of this king. You don't deserve to live anymore, Saber. Gilgamesh waved his hand, and several golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. A few relics extended and attacked Artoria. However, bam, 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 bam. Artoria swung the blackened Excalibur and deflected the treasures that were flying toward her. Are they all relics? No wonder you dare to talk nonsense here. Artoria looked at the weapons that were deflected to the side and said in shock. Now you know how powerful this king is. However, this won't change your death. Saber, disappear under my attack. Gilgamesh waved his hand again. This time, dozens of golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. Dozens of relics were flying toward Artoria. How ridiculous, Archer. Do you think you can defeat me with just this? Artoria raised her holy sword, and countless magic power gathered on the sword. It looked like she was going to release a relic, but Gilgamesh didn't think so. In the blink of an eye, a huge black magic sword was formed. Artoria raised the black magic sword and swung it lightly. The treasures that were flying towards Artoria were all knocked away. You condensed your noble relic on the sword and didn't use it? Well done, Saber. It would be too boring if you just left like that. Gilgamesh could tell the truth about the mana greatsword at a glance. When Wu Ming used his sword, he liked to condense his relic on his sword and not release it. He used it as a giant sword. Well, Artoria learned it from Wu Ming. However, Gilgamesh knew that it was Wu Ming's trick. Therefore, he was even more annoyed when Artoria said that she was his possession. Didn't that prove that they were related? Artoria, on the other hand, did not respond to Gilgamesh's compliment. If that's all you've got, I advise you to return to the Valhalla as soon as possible. In the face of Artoria's ridicule, Gilgamesh was already annoyed by the relationship between Wu Ming and Artoria. Like a fuse, Gilgamesh was furious again. Very well, thief, you've completely angered me. Gilgamesh waved his hands and his huge chest swayed, which made Artoria a little annoyed. In an instant, countless golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. If one really wanted to count, there were at least hundreds of them. Go to hell, mongrel. Hundreds of relics that were grade B and above bombarded Artoria's place. As the name implied, the beach of Winterwood City was destroyed. The bombardment also affected the other servants. Wu Ming, Cuchulain, Ryder, and Lancer all stopped what they were doing and looked over. These are all treasures. As a king, Ryder could naturally recognize the objects that were being bombarded indiscriminately. Lancer did not speak, but took the opportunity to jump back nimbly, widening the distance between him and Ryder, and then left directly. If the 7 servants really fought, Sakura Madu might be affected. Lancer thought so and decided to retreat first. Ryder did not want to stop Lancer from leaving. He just glanced at Sakura Madu's place and no longer paid attention to it. He, who had summoned countless soldiers, had already found Sakura Madu's position. However, due to his dignity as a king, Ryder did not attack Sakura Madu. My king, retreat first. There's no need to show your cards here. Tashiomi Enosaka's voice came into Ryder's ears. Yes, I know. Then the soldiers and the giant elephant beside Ryder sank into the ground and disappeared. Ryder, on the other hand, turned into a spirit and left. On the other side. Let Berserker retreat. Amiya Kiritsugu said to Kuyu Meimi on the other side of the communicator. Yes, Kiritsugu. Later, Berserker, who was preparing to attack Gilgamesh because he could not find the target, stopped and jumped away from the beach. On the other side of Wu Ming. Caster, it's time to retreat. Kenneth's voice came. Yes, I'll go now, master. Cuchulain said rather unhappily. That's not like you. Wu Ming looked at Cuchulain. I can't help it. I'm a caster now. Compared to fighting, I want to guide my master to the right path. Cuchulain smiled. After becoming a caster, Cuchulain's fighting heart also calmed down. If he did not meet Wu Ming, he was afraid that Cuchulain would really fight as a caster. But listening to your voice, your master is not the kind of guy who can be guided by you. Wu Ming didn't attack, but put the gun in his hand into the black ripples. Well, you're right, but since master asked me to leave, then that's it. Next time, let's fight to the death. After saying that, Cuchulain turned into a spirit and left. The reason why Wu Ming didn't fight with Cuchulain was not that he didn't want to continue to fight with Cuchulain, nor was it that the gunman's mind was in a mess. It was because Artoria and Gilgamesh were both disciples that Wu Ming cared about. Wu Ming wouldn't allow them to kill each other. Thinking so, Wu Ming went to the place where the explosion had already ended and produced countless smoke and dust. At this moment, Artoria, who was in the center of the explosion, was wrapped in a large amount of black magic fog, as if she was a servant incarnate. Enough magic turned into a magic fog to offset Gilgamesh's noble phantasms. Then Artoria waved the Excalibur, and a huge magic impact dispersed the smoke and dust caused by the explosion. You're quite capable, Saber. You formed a magic defense to offset the explosion caused by my noble phantasms. Although Gilgamesh said so, he was already wary of Artoria. How much magic did she have to be able to defend against the explosion of so many noble phantasms? Anyway, Gilgamesh knew that it was impossible for him to do it. The magic required was too great unless he had the Holy Grail. Since your attack is over, it's my turn, Artoria said, raising the Excalibur in her hand, and more magic gathered on the holy sword than before. Is this guy's magic infinite? Gilgamesh frowned. Then the golden ripples behind him opened. However, this time what appeared in the golden ripples was no longer a weapon, but a defensive gear. At this time, two chains suddenly appeared behind Gilgamesh and Artoria, entangling them. Okay, enough is enough. Wuming's voice came. Chapter 333. A black ripple appeared behind Artoria and Gilgamesh, and the chains came out from it. On the other side, Wuming grabbed two chains with one hand, and the chains went into the black ripple. It was the fake Enkidu from Wuming's Dragonist. Wuming, who appeared as an assassin, did not bring Enkidu with him. Although the fake Enkidu was not as good as the real Enkidu, it could still play a certain role. Artoria put away the sacred sword, and Gilgamesh put away the gate of Babylon, which was the best proof. Tisk, Gilgamesh looked at the chains that were tightly wrapped around him and said in a displeased tone. Of course, she could tell that this was her friend's avatar and it was fake. Gilgamesh hated fake avatars the most. Artoria, on the other hand, did not say anything. This fake chain was made with the original Enkidu, so it only kept its special attack mode against divinity, which was why Gilgamesh was wrapped around by the chain. Artoria, on the other hand, had the red dragon blood in her veins. The chain was nothing more than a sturdy chain. Wuming walked between the two and looked at them. Sit down and talk. After all, both of you are my disciples. As soon as Wuming said that, Artoria and Gilgamesh were shocked and looked at each other in disbelief. Wuming, who had almost guessed the result, could only smile awkwardly. The next day, in the small mansion that Wuming bought, Gilgamesh was sitting on his personal chair, looking angry, while Wuming was reading the newspaper in a relaxed manner. A natural gas explosion near the beach in Winterwood City? Why is it always a natural gas explosion? Wuming laughed. At the same time, Wuming looked at Gilgamesh. Since Gilgamesh came back yesterday, Gilgamesh had been throwing a tantrum. Well, a girl throwing a tantrum. If the male version of Gilgamesh was here, Wuming would have slapped him a long time ago. Therefore, girls needed to be coaxed even if they were his disciples. Is Gilgamesh still angry? Wuming asked softly. Gilgamesh did not say anything. He crossed his arms and closed his eyes. But Wuming could understand. First, he hid the fact that Artoria was Wuming's disciple, deceit, then he used Gilgamesh's friend against Gilgamesh, insult, and even defended Artoria from Gilgamesh's point of view. All kinds of signs caused Gilgamesh to be angry, which was understandable. I didn't mean to hide it deliberately. After all, I have experienced too many things. If you told me everything, I would be very busy. As Gilgamesh's teacher, Wuming could naturally see what Gilgamesh was upset about. Then Wuming continued. And the reason why you used Enkidu was because you were too disobedient. Wuming suddenly became strict. Gilgamesh was slightly moved, but he still kept silent. Only his eyes opened. Do you remember our purpose? It's not the Holy Grail War, but to investigate the source of the black mud. It's not wrong for you to blindly go to war with the servants, but there must be a limit to everything. You are easily angered. Wuming gently taught Gilgamesh as if they had returned to the past. As for letting Artoria go, that's because Artoria must be related to our target this time. You know, we should cast a long line to catch a big fish. Wuming advised earnestly, hoping that Gilgamesh could accept it. Humph. Even so, it can't make this king calm down. Although Gilgamesh said that, Wuming, who knew her well, knew that her anger had mostly dissipated. A Uruk Hyunryong feast. Wuming said the name of a set of dishes. Because Wuming was a good cook in Uruk, the set of dishes was once famous in Uruk and even in Babylonia. Therefore, almost everyone who tasted it said that if they could eat it again, they would dare to go to hell, which was enough to show Wuming's superb cooking. Gilgamesh swallowed, thought for a moment, and said, Deal. Wuming showed a victorious smile. Yuanzong Mountain. Wuming came here and was ready to check the Great Holy Grail again. Is there another source of the black mud? Walking on the way to the Great Holy Grail, Wuming thought. After all, the black mud inside the Great Holy Grail was the evil of this world, and as long as there were humans, there was still a source of evil, then the evil of this world would not go extinct. It could be said that as long as humans existed, the evil of this world would not go extinct. But I always have a bad feeling. When he came to the innermost part of the Great Holy Grail, Wu-Ming saw a figure. Artoria? Yes, Wu-Ming saw Artoria. Artoria was wearing black armor, her hands were on the sword inserted in the ground as if waiting for something. What's going on? Artoria. Wu-Ming frowned and asked Artoria. However, Artoria did not speak, she just opened her closed eyes and looked at Wu-Ming with her golden eyes full of severity and tyranny. I didn't expect you to find this place, assassin. Suddenly, a man's voice came from the nearby shadow. Hearing this voice, Wu-Ming's heart was filled with a sense of crisis. This feeling, Wu-Ming instantly took out the meteor silver and looked at the shadow with 200% vigilance. It seems that you're not an ordinary servant. I'm afraid that Jack the Ripper isn't your real name. A young man with a green top hat, a green coat, and a gentle smile, who looked less than 30 years old, came out from the shadow. Although he was smiling, Wu-Ming could feel the filth in his body. Wu-Ming did not ask, "Who are you?" or anything like that. It was obvious that he was an enemy that would not rest until one of them was dead. With his A-class agility, Wu-Ming instantly rushed in front of the tall hat man, and Wu-Ming raised his sword and was about to slash down. However, when Wu-Ming's sword was still a little bit away from the tall hat man, Wu-Ming's sword was bounced off. Clang. Wu-Ming looked at Artoria, who used her black holy sword to bounce off his sword, and quickly retreated. He quickly opened up the distance between them. Artoria put down her holy sword and stood in front of the tall hat man to protect him. This made Wu-Ming could not help but frown. Although I don't know why you are so hostile to me, but it seems that I also hate you, assassin. The tall hat man continued to smile as if nothing had happened. Let me introduce myself first. I am Rafe Lionel Florence. Nice to meet you, assassin. Chapter 334. Rafe Lionel Florence. Wu-Ming murmured the name softly. Florence? The 72 demon gods. Wu-Ming pondered carefully. Was it related to Solomon, or was it just a coincidence? To be honest, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I'm just here to follow the orders of our king. Rafe spread out his hands, showing that he didn't want to fight. But your goal is to destroy the world, right? As long as you have such a goal, you are destined to be my enemy. Wu-Ming raised the meteor silver with one hand and pointed it at Wu-Ming. Ah, you're right. I can't wait to kill you, assassin. Rafe laughed and looked at Wu-Ming with a twisted face. Go, Saber. Rafe ordered, and Artoria rushed toward Wu-Ming. Wu-Ming frowned and raised his sword toward Artoria. Wu-Ming was wondering why Artoria became like this, but it seemed that it was because of this guy named Rafe. Bang, bang, bang. Wu-Ming was knocked away by Artoria's attack. Artoria was a saber, and her attributes were much higher than Wu-Ming's assassin. It could be said that Wu-Ming had never felt so weak before. Artoria didn't chase after Wu-Ming after knocking him away. Wu-Ming steadied himself and didn't rush to fight Artoria. Instead, he looked at Rafe, who was behind Artoria. It seems that you are Saber's master. I'm afraid that her original master has already been killed by you. Rafe laughed when he heard Wu-Ming's words. As expected of you. I knew it. You can't be an ordinary person if you make me feel like I have to kill you. Rafe covered his face with one hand, and his voice came from under his palm. Then, Lev removed his hand from his face and looked at Wu-Ming with his twisted eyes. You're right. I've already taken back Saber's master. Recycling? Wu-Ming was a little puzzled, but he did not show it on his face. Lev did not know what Wu-Ming was thinking, nor did he want to know. Instead, he pointed at Artoria. Instantly, Artoria's heart began to glow. A cup could be vaguely seen in her heart. That is, the Holy Grail. Wu-Ming was shocked. There was indeed the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart. Wu-Ming could tell that the Grail in Artoria's heart was complete, which meant that the Grail in the Winterwood Cavern had been inserted into Artoria's heart by Leviticus. Wu-Ming hurriedly asked Kalas to check the Holy Grail in the Yuanzhong Mountain Cavern. Without a doubt, the Holy Grail had disappeared. Although he did not know how Lev inserted the Holy Grail into Artoria's heart, there was no doubt that the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart was indeed the Holy Grail. This also explained why Artoria had turned dark. Her heart was filled with the evils of the world, so there was no need to mention her entire being. And no wonder Artoria had almost unlimited magic power. It turned out that the Holy Grail was supporting her. And from Lev's words, It seemed that Artoria's master was the Holy Grail. Wu Ming thought of Mayu, Ilya, and Blackie, which undoubtedly annoyed Wu Ming. Yes, I gave the Holy Grail to Saber as a trade. Saber will listen to me. What a perfect trade. Lev sighed like a bard. Then Lev began to speak again. It's so sad, assassin. I was just going to stay here for a while and leave after completing the task given to me by the king. But you came in without permission. Lev looked at Wu Ming fiercely. If that's the case, then you can go to hell, assassin. With that said, magic power gathered in Lev's hand, and the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart began to glow. Don't even think about it. Although Wu Ming did not know what Lev wanted to do, he would not just stand by and watch. However, Saber, release your noble phantasm. Sure enough, Lev was also a smart person. He directly ordered Artoria to release her noble phantasm. Although Wu Ming did not know whether Artoria was forced to obey Lev's order or not, he was sure that Artoria listened to Lev and began to condense her noble phantasm. Excalibur. Artoria raised the holy sword high, and countless magic power flowed from the fantasy breed's heart into the holy sword. The black light expanded greatly, and then Artoria slashed at Wu Ming. Wu Ming looked at the black light in front of him, and a sentence popped up in his heart. Does this count as being chopped? Dong? A loud noise came from inside Yuzong Mountain, and a black light broke out from inside Yuzong Mountain. The black light was enough to cause a disturbance in Winterwood City, but now it did not cause any disturbance. In the midst of the ruins, Wu Ming struggled to reach out a hand that was wearing a black sleeve. Crash. As the owner of the hand pushed away the rubble, there was a faint sound. Wu Ming's figure squeezed out of the rubble in a sorry state, and he shook his head. It hurts. I almost went back to my roots. Wu Ming sat on the rubble in a sorry state and he held his head in pain. Master, if you did not activate the inherent barrier at the critical moment, with your current attributes, I'm afraid you would have returned to your original body, Kalas, who was on Wu Ming's head, said. Although Wu Ming's body was quite broken, the top hat had always been clean. Well. After all, who knew that Artoria could release her noble phantasm in an instant? Wu Ming laughed. That was right. Logically speaking, the light cannon noble phantasm needed a short time to charge, and without charging, the power of the light cannon noble phantasm was not enough to be compared with a noble phantasm. As for Artoria's instantaneous noble phantasm, it should be a convenience given to her by the Great Holy Grail. Fortunately, Jack's noble phantasm is useful, or else I would be dead. The moment Artoria released her noble phantasm, Wu Ming activated the inherent barrier, Dark Mist. Although he succeeded in pulling himself into the inherent barrier, he was still sent flying by Artoria. Therefore, even though Wu Ming looked rather wretched, his foundation was not damaged much. After using magic to repair his body, Wu Ming began to pay attention to his surroundings. Looking at the burning streets around him, Wu Ming frowned. I remember that I was sent flying in the direction of Winterwood City, and the burning here does not seem to be caused by me falling. Wu Ming looked at the burning Dongmu City, and felt a sense of uneasiness as he felt the extremely turbid aura. Then Wu Ming jumped onto a tall building that was almost completely burned. Looking around, the entire Winterwood City had turned into a sea of fire. Chapter 335. Bang! Wu Ming casually sent a skeleton soldier that emerged from the shadows of the building flying. He continued to investigate the surrounding situation. So far, there are no ordinary people in the entire Winterwood City. Did they disappear into thin air? Or were they taken away? Although there were traces of blood and corpses, Wu Ming checked them and found that they were magicians, not ordinary people. Wu Ming stopped and did not continue to walk. Everywhere is full of the smell of the black root mud, as if it has been soaked in it. Wu Ming said in annoyance. No matter what, let's go home and Gil first. Wu Ming was worried about Gil. After all, the city was now empty, only some skeleton soldiers and ghosts. Maybe the other 6 servants besides Wu Ming also disappeared. Therefore, Winterwood City was full of contaminated magic. Wu Ming could not detect the changes in the magic of Winterwood City. That is to say, if there was a battle, Wu Ming could only hear it through his eyes and ears. Just like now. Wah! What the hell is going on here? A girl's cry for help came. There are still people alive? Wu Ming's eyes lit up. Let's go and see. With that, Wu Ming disappeared. On the other side, a white-haired girl was running angrily, and behind her was a group of skeleton soldiers. That's right, a group. This made Wuming who came here could not help but blink. Is this guy's lucky? That's right, although there were a lot of skeleton soldiers, Wuming basically encountered the scattered skeleton soldiers in the shadows of some tall buildings. Did the skeleton soldiers know how to hunt the weak together? Thinking like this, Wuming walked toward the girl and his hands did not stop moving. The girl did not seem to notice the arrival of Wuming, she was an assassin, and continued to run. However, as often happens in melodramatic plots, the girl tripped. Damn it, don't underestimate me, I'm the master of animus. As if going crazy, the girl raised her hands. Of course, she was not surrendering, but she was going to use magic to attack. Gander. The white-haired girl raised one of her hands and extended her index finger. She then placed her other hand on the hand that had extended her index finger, and a magic array appeared in front of her index finger. A yellow magic bullet shot from the magic circle and hit a skeleton soldier, and the skeleton soldier disappeared in an instant. Is it a Nordic curse magic? Wuming said calmly. This kind of magic was originally a curse that could reduce people's physical ability. If it was serious, it could even kill people, but if there was enough magic power, it could also turn it into a magic bullet. This girl seemed to be a first-class magician. However, for the skeleton soldiers, it was not enough to make them feel the danger. The rest of the skeleton soldiers rushed toward the white-haired girl. Don't underestimate me. The girl continued to shoot Gander, but it could only kill a few skeleton soldiers. At this time, the girl found that there was a skeleton soldier on the electric pole behind her. The girl turned her head and looked at the demonic skeleton. Gander. The girl panicked and shot magic bullets at the skeleton soldier, but because of the panic, the magic bullets fired by the girl were a little off target, and the skeleton soldier dodged them easily. Facing the skeleton soldiers that fell from the sky, the girl was completely panicked. The girl held her head in fear and closed her eyes in despair. Someone save me. Lev. Klala. Accompanied by the sound of something falling to the ground, the girl found that the expected attack did not come, and even the sound of the skeleton soldiers in front of her disappeared. Huh. The girl slowly opened her eyes and looked at the skeleton soldier behind her. She saw that the skeleton soldier that had just attacked the girl had been divided into 13 pieces like a work of art and scattered on the ground. Then the girl looked at the skeleton soldiers in front of her, all of them were still. A young man wearing a black trench coat, a black top hat, and his hands in his pockets slowly walked out of the skeleton soldiers. Klala? All the skeleton soldiers turned into pieces and scattered on the ground, making a sound. The young girl was startled and her body shrank back. The young man took off his top hat and made a noble salute to the girl. Although I'm sorry, I'm not the Lev you want, but I can still save you, lady. The girl looked at the young man in front of her blankly and did not speak. On the other side, Cuculin and a rather naked man were fighting. The man wielded a spiral sword and attacked Cuculin, who was holding a magic staff, repeatedly. What's wrong, Cuculin? Can't you fight after becoming a caster? The man continued to attack Cuculin with a smile on his face. Damn it. Since you're mocking me, then take this, Fergus. Cuculin smiled bitterly, then pointed his staff at the man named Fergus. The Loon Rune appeared under the man's feet, and then there was a big explosion. Boom. Cuculin took advantage of the impact of the big explosion to open up the distance and stood firmly in the distance. Whoosh. Fergus waved the spiral sword in his hand, and the smoke caused by the big explosion dissipated, then he put the spiral sword on his shoulder. You're really worthy of being called a Loon Rune while fighting. You've become a caster, your brain is also good. Fergus continued to smile and looked at Cuculin. Well, I'm also a caster. And where did you come from? There are only 7 casters in the Holy Grail War, Fergus Markroy. Cuculin looked serious. Since Cuculin and the other 7 casters retreated, the next night, Cuculin's spirit body stayed in the Winterwood Hotel. Suddenly he could not sense his master. Cuculin quickly looked for his master, but there was no one in the Winterwood Hotel. Outside the hotel, Cuculin found that the whole Winterwood city had turned into a sea of fire, and he himself, even without his master, felt the lack of magic power. There was no doubt that the Great Holy Grail had provided him with magic power. Then Fergus came to the door. I don't remember there being 2 sabers in the Holy Grail War. Where's the Night King? Cuculin looked at Fergus seriously. Well, I'm not very clear here. I only know that my master used the Holy Grail to resummon 7 casters and let us kill all the survivors in the city, including the servants. Fergus shrugged and said indifferently. However, it seems that there are not many living people in this city. I sensed the aura of a servant, so I came here. I didn't expect it to be you, Cuculin. Cuculin was shocked by Fergus' words. Not to mention other things, his master had resummoned 7 casters, which meant that there were now 14 casters in Winterwood City. Chapter 336. That is to say, now it's a battle royale between 14 servants. No, it should be 7 servants versus 7 servants. Cuculin laughed maniacally. Well, you're not wrong to say that, but I think it's more like the 7 servants on my side are killing the rest of the servants. Fergus said arrogantly with a smile on his face. Since you're going to leave, I'll tell you, Cuculin. Fergus said, raising the spiral sword in his hand. Your saber belonged to us from the start, and your berserker was too noisy, so we surrounded him and killed him. But to be honest, he's quite capable. Fergus still had a smile on his face. Cuculin felt a sense of crisis in his heart, and he quickly began to draw the Loon rune. If you can resurrect 11 times, I have nothing to say, but you will still be killed by us. The spiral sword began to emit a strange light. Cuculin, who was familiar with Fergus, knew that it was the precursor of Fergus's noble phantasm. Goodbye, my adopted son and friend, Cuculin. After that, Fergus waved the shining spiral sword in his hand. Khalid Balg. With the release of the noble phantasm, a rainbow-like brilliance covered Cuculin. Boom. The huge impact brought smoke and dust that covered the sky. So, who's next? Fergus said, carrying the released spiral sword and leaving the Winterwood Hotel. When the smoke and dust dissipated, several high-rise buildings, including the Winterwood Hotel, turned into ruins as if witnessing the end of the hero, Cuculin, and as if symbolizing the bravery of the hero, Fergus, lying there quietly. On the other side, Wuming and the white-haired girl walked side by side on the burning abandoned road. The collapse of the Winterwood Hotel and the series of explosions naturally attracted the attention of Wuming and the white-haired girl. Wuming frowned and looked in that direction. Cuculin, is that you? What happened over there? Assassin, do you know something? The white-haired girl said rather angrily. Maybe it was a fight between servants. Who knows? Wuming shrugged and did not say anything. The white-haired girl resisted the urge to curse and touched the necklace around her neck. She didn't say anything and instead smiled happily. It's time to go, Olga. There's still a long way to go to our destination, Wuming said, walking ahead. I got it. Also, I'm your master. Can't you just listen to me for once? The girl named Olga didn't say anything in the end. She obediently followed Wuming and complained. Yes, a master who doesn't have the ability to master. Assassin? Wuming could not help but smile. After Wuming saved the girl, he generously admitted his identity as the masterless assassin. The girl also told him her name, Olga Marie Animusfia. It sounded like a noble name. Wuming vaguely remembered this surname when he went to the clock tower. In that case, let's work together. Then he made a suggestion. Wuming meant to let the girl named Olga Marie be his temporary master. Of course, this didn't mean that Wuming couldn't do without a master, because Wuming was directly summoned by the Great Holy Grail. No, it should be said that Wuming's main body was summoned by the Great Holy Grail. In fact, it was Wuming's main body that was summoned by the Great Holy Grail. Of course, on the other hand, Wuming was not interested in Olga Marie or anything like that. It was because Olga Marie's previous words made Wuming quite interested. Who can save me, Rafe? At that time Olga Marie did shout that. And Wuming had seen the owner of this name not long ago, well, and he was tricked. Wuming intuitively felt that Olga Marie and Rafe must be related, but Olga Marie didn't look like a big villain. Therefore, Wuming was very curious about where Rafe, Olga Marie, and the others came from. There was no doubt that Rafe was not from this world and Olga Marie was full of puzzles. Wuming was a magician who explored the whole Winterwood City. At that time there was no Olga Marie, and no one entered Winterwood City these days. And the most important thing was that Olga Marie was dead. Yes, Wuming could perceive that Olga Marie was a ghost existence, similar to the existence of a servant. But it seemed that Olga Marie didn't know that she was dead, and still thought that she was a human, still alive. For various reasons, Wuming proposed to establish a contract with Olga Marie. I refuse. Of course, Olga Marie with a sad and angry face refused Wuming. Wuming certainly knew why Olga Marie refused, as before Wuming and Olga Marie joked that there was no master talent. Olga Marie was a first-class magician, but he didn't know why Olga Marie didn't have a master talent, not even a little bit. First-class magicians didn't have a master talent, which was undoubtedly interesting. However, who was Wu Ming for this kind of situation? Wu Ming prepared a tool very early. Wu Ming took out a necklace from the black ripples. This was a necklace that Wu Ming made according to the technology of the Yucca family. When Wu Ming threw the necklace to Olga Marie and explained the situation, Olga Marie was in a daze for a while, and then happily put on the necklace and established a magic channel with Wu Ming. The necklace had a technique that could connect the wearer and the contract servant. Although it only provided magic and there was no command curse, it could be regarded as half a master. This was the technology of the Yucca family to let the cyborgs provide magic to the servants. The cyborgs provided magic, the master managed the servants, gave orders, fought, and used command curses. It could be said that it didn't consume the master's magic at all. In order to establish a master-servant contract with Olga Marie, Wu Ming came up with a stupid way. Only in this way Wu Ming and Olga Marie didn't completely trust each other. After all, Olga Marie was a magician, she should be cautious, which she did well. And Wu Ming simply wanted to follow Olga Marie, he wasn't in a hurry to know her information. Wu Ming had a hunch that as long as he followed Olga Marie, he would naturally know the information. Therefore, the two didn't exchange information. After that, Wu Ming proposed to go to his stronghold to see the situation. He still had an ally, servant. Because she was unfamiliar with the place, so Olga Marie agreed to follow Wu Ming to his stronghold. As a result, because the small villa that Wu Ming bought was in the east, and Wu Ming and Olga Marie's location was in the west, the two of them didn't arrive for a long time. Olga Marie said, "I'm going to die." Then they encountered the collapse of the Winterwood Hotel. Wu Ming didn't want to stir up trouble. After all, his current assassin class, Jack the Ripper, wasn't strong in frontal combat. You probably haven't seen a Jack with a 100% critical strike rate. So he could only kidnap Twinkle and let her be his damage dealer. However, trouble always fell from the sky. Leia. Chapter 337. Leia. Accompanied by an inexplicable roar, a black creature with black smoke all over its body charged out of nowhere. The opponent was undoubtedly a servant. Wu Ming could feel it at such a close distance, and it seemed to be a berserker. What's going on? Isn't Berserker Hercules? Wu Ming frowned. Later, Wu Ming observed that berserkers seemed to rush out from the collapsed Winterwood Hotel, which meant that the opponent was previously under the hotel. The opponent's whole body was black, and he could tell that it was an African. Wu Ming thought so. However, it was lucky. Leia. The black mass roared and rushed toward Wu Ming. That's right, it rushed toward Wu Ming, ignoring Olga Marie. Wu Ming could feel that the opponent was targeting him. Olga, hide, it's a servant. Wu Ming said seriously to Olga Marie behind him. Olga Marie quickly found a ruin to hide. Berserker picked up a telephone pole from the side of the road, jumped up and slammed it toward Wu Ming. Boom. The ground was directly smashed and large pieces of stone flew up. Oh. Olga Marie covered her head and hid behind the ruins, whimpering. Really, what the hell did you do, assassin? Wu Ming fell behind Berserker, so the attack naturally didn't hit Wu Ming. It's not my fault, this guy came to me. Wu Ming shrugged. Leia. Berserker roared and once again raised the blackened telephone pole and smashed it toward Wu Ming. Boom. The ground was smashed again. This guy's agility is at least A rank. Wu Ming frowned. Wu Ming almost couldn't dodge the attack. But I'm an assassin. If you expect an assassin to fight a berserker, perhaps only the ancestor of the assassin, the legendary First Hassan, could do that. If that's the case. Wu Ming narrowed his eyes. Leia. Berserker madly rushed toward Wu Ming. With Berserker's current speed, Wu Ming was in danger. The dark mist city, along with Wu Ming's noble phantasm, countless smoke exploded and engulfed Berserker, forcing Berserker was forced to stop. The smoke enveloped an area of 100 meters with Wu Ming as the center. Then the smoke disappeared, revealing Wu Ming's figure and Berserker's disappearance. Olga Marie put out her head when there was no more noise. Did you kill that Berserker? Olga Marie was in disbelief. The smoke also covered her, so Olga Marie couldn't see anything and couldn't hear anything clearly, so she didn't know what happened. Of course not, I just trapped that Berserker in an enchantment. Let's go, he'll come out soon. That's right, Jack the Ripper's enchantment. The mist. It was the spirit storm that recreated London in the 19th century. It was also the reason why Jack the Ripper could spread fog and use fog. Enchantment. Enchantment? Olga Marie was obviously shocked. After all, for a magician, an enchantment was the highest level of magic. Don't be so surprised. My enchantment is cursed, it's not a good thing. Wu Ming shook his head, then took the lead and began to move toward the stronghold. After that, Olga Marie didn't ask any more questions. After all, Olga Marie was just a fake master who provided magic, so she couldn't see the attributes of the servant. Well, my situation is a bit complicated, I can't explain it in a short time. You can call me Jack or Assassin, after all we're just partners. Wu Ming said at that time. Assassin. Olga Marie thought carefully. Hey. If you don't follow me, I'm leaving. Wait a minute. After walking for a while, Olga Marie really couldn't walk anymore, so Wu Ming took Olga Marie to a store to settle down. Although most of the buildings were destroyed and burned, there were still some buildings that weren't completely destroyed. Like this small store, there was some edible food in it. Here. Wu Ming said, throwing a bread to Olga Marie. This is. Olga Marie looked at the old goods, slightly nostalgic. It's still in the packaging, it's still edible. Wu Ming continued to organize the edible food, one by one, putting it into the black ripple. Olga Marie ate in small bites, looking at Wu Ming's black ripple. Is this an independent space? Olga Marie asked. Yes, because I cheated a little, I let the assassin rank have the noble phantoms of other ranks. Wu Ming smiled a little awkwardly. Wait, you can cheat? Olga Marie heard that for the first time, she couldn't stay calm. Didn't I say after all I'm special? Wu Ming just said to Olga Marie's surprise. Then, after organizing the edible food, Wu Ming walked to the door. I'll go out and check the situation, you stay here and don't run around. Wu Ming said. What? You make it sound like I like to run around? Olga Marie retorted Wu Ming, but Wu Ming just pretended not to hear. I also need to clear my mind, you should go. Olga Marie said in disgust. Wu Ming shrugged and didn't say anything. Wu Ming released his mana, propelling himself to fly up and directly arrived at the roof of a tall building. From the height of this building, he could almost overlook the entire Winterwood City. Standing on the roof, Wu Ming looked at Winterwood City. He could vaguely see that there were battles in Winterwood City, and there were more than one. There weren't many battles that could cause large-scale explosions, and Wu Ming could vaguely sense a small battle. But, it's a bit too much. Wu Ming said in detail. What Wu Ming was referring to was naturally the battles in those few places. Assuming that in addition to Silent Noise and Berserker just now, there were still 7 servants, and those large-scale and small-scale battles just now were more than 3 places. It's impossible that there were a few servants who had nothing to do and attacked by themselves. Combined with the extra Berserker plus Lev's trick on the Holy Grail before Wu Ming was sent flying, Wu Ming almost guessed it. The number of servants increased? Is it to chase me or something else? Wu Ming thought. At this time, Wu Ming sensed that several servants were coming this way. If these servants didn't change their direction, there was no doubt that they would encounter Olga Marie. The perception of servants was much stronger than humans, and Olga Marie couldn't hide under the eyes of servants. But the servants coming this way just proved Wu Ming's conjecture. The number of servants increased. Swish. Wu Ming instantly disappeared from the roof. Chapter 338. On the abandoned and burning street, 2 figures were running. One of the figures was wearing a rather revealing purple tights, and some parts of the body were covered with armor. One of the figures was holding a 2-meter-high shield with a cross on the outside, and the other hand was holding a girl. Needless to say, she was a servant. The girl had short orange-red hair that was tied into a single ponytail. She wore a simple white top with black straps around her chest and abdomen. There was a black belt around her waist. She wore a short black skirt, black stockings and white boots. Although it looked like work clothes from somewhere, it looked extremely beautiful on the girl. The girl with short orange hair had 3 red marks on the back of her right hand, which formed a shield. Obviously, she was the master of the girl in purple tights. Next to the 2, a girl in a cloak was carrying a scythe and holding a little girl with black hair in her arms. If Wu Ming was here, he would know that she was one of the 7 servants on the beach. She used the scythe as a weapon, Lancer of the Tong family. Needless to say, the little girl with short black hair in her arms was the master of Lancer. The 3 petal-like marks on the back of her right hand were the best proof. Matthew, are you okay? The girl with short orange hair asked with concern. She seemed to feel guilty for letting the younger generation carry her. It's okay, senpai. I am senpai's servant and senpai is my master. The girl named Matthew said and smiled at her master. They're coming. Lancer, who was beside the two of them, finished speaking. Suddenly, a sharp arrow was shot towards them. Mashu quickly stopped and raised her shield to block the sharp heart-shaped arrows. Bang, 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 bang. A few steel-like collision sounds came, and Matthew, who was holding the shield, was pushed back a few steps by the huge impact. Are you okay, Matthew? The orange-haired girl asked worriedly, her words vaguely hinting that she was blaming herself for not being able to help. It's okay, senpai. Please be careful, the opponent is a very powerful servant. Although it was very difficult to resist the attack, Mashu still smiled and said to her master who was protecting her. Matthew is right. Chaldea's instrument shows that there are two servants comparable to gods. No, there is no doubt that they are gods near you. Be careful, Matthew. Tachika. A male voice came from a device on the wrist of the girl with short orange hair who seemed to be called Rika. Although the voice sounded rather unreliable, cough cough, there was no doubt that he was right. Then Matthew said to Lancer. Ms. Anna, please help us. I don't want senpai to leave this place. Matthew and Tachika had seen Anna's ability. 4 mini skeleton soldiers, Anna just waved her sickle and killed all the skeleton soldiers. She was much more powerful than Matthew. The girl called Anna couldn't help but look at her little master. Compared to Anna, she hoped that these people could call her Lancer. Also, if her little master didn't always call Anna sister, Matthew and others wouldn't know that she was called Anna. Sister Anna? Sakura Madu looked at Anna. But Anna was still hesitant because the enemy this time was, What's wrong, my lovely sister? Are you afraid to attack your own sister? A beautiful voice came from behind them. Everyone looked at the newcomer in panic because they didn't notice her presence until she spoke. But it was obvious that she had been standing there for a long time. That's right, my lovely sister, are you afraid to attack your own sister? However, at this time, Matthew and others also heard a beautiful voice in front of them. Everyone looked to the front again, and a gorgeous purple-haired girl with 2 ponytails appeared in front of them. She was dressed almost exactly the same as the one behind them. The only difference between the two was their clothes and weapons. The girl who came from behind didn't have any weapons in her hands. She only had a gauntlet that protected the back of her hands. Moreover, it was more appropriate to call it an ornament than a gauntlet. It made her hands look more tempting. The girl's clothes were similar to a royal shawl and a low-cut princess dress with a long transparent hem that covered her beautiful legs. A few transparent scarves were wrapped around the girl's body, making her look particularly charming. The girl who came from the front held a small bow made of gold in her hand, but there were no arrows. From this, it could be seen that the heart-shaped arrows just now were shot by this girl. The girl didn't have gauntlets on her hands, but a bracelet made of beautiful strings of beads, which made her small hands even more beautiful. In terms of clothes, the girl's clothes were similar to the clothes of the Greek girl next door. It was just a short skirt that went up to the knees, and there was a bow in front of the chest. Other than that, the two girls looked exactly the same, and even their temperament was exactly the same. They were like the goddess of love, full of charm and couldn't help but want to surrender. Fortunately, Matthew and others were all women, and more or less resisted the two gods. If they were men, they would probably be lying on the ground licking the toes of the goddess. Sister. Anna couldn't help but whisper. The 3 people beside Anna heard what Anna said and were shocked. Sister? Matthew looked at Anna in disbelief. So, Anna, you are also a god? Tachika looked at Anna in surprise. Anna only made a soft sound and did not say anything else. How sad, my sister, you haven't told them your real name yet. The girl in the back smiled and looked at Anna with a light tone. Your master looks too young, and it seems that she can't use the ability of a master. The girl in front covered her mouth and laughed. So, what should we do now, sister? Will you die with your companions or rise up and resist us? The 2 girls finished each other's words as if they were the same person. Sister. Perhaps I was summoned to this era to kill you again. Anna put Sakura Madu down, and Sakura Madu ran into Tachika's arms obediently. Then Anna picked up the scythe from behind and stood back to back with Matthew, protecting their master behind them. Seeing the scythe pointed at her, the girl in the back smiled happily and painfully. My poor sister, she has to experience the pain of killing her family again. The girl in front was also the same. The 2 were happy that Anna didn't have to die, but they were sad that their sister had to bear the pain of killing her family. Since that's the case, I'll end all of you. Suddenly, a ghostly voice came out of nowhere. Mother of disintegration. Chapter 339. Maria Ripper. After the activation of the relic's true name, a thick fog engulfed everyone. The thick fog reduced everyone's visibility to less than 5 meters. Even Anna's two sisters could barely see each other. The girl behind Gadotsi and the rest sensed the danger as they were of the same rank. She quickly warned her sisters. Urieli, be careful. However, sigh. The girl named Urieli in front of Gadotsi and the rest was a little dazed as she let out a doubtful voice. A silhouette appeared behind her. It was a black leather windbreaker, a black top hat and black leather shoes. Everything was black except for the 2 red glows where his eyes were. It was extremely horrifying. What a pity, Gorgon's goddess. You're really unlucky, said the black silhouette. After all, I exist for women. The black silhouette revealed his face. It was Wuming. After Wuming finished speaking, Urieli's vision turned black and she fell. Sister? Anna shouted in worry. She raised her scythe and looked at Wuming with hostility. Wuming hugged the girl who fell and looked at everyone with a smile. Ignoring Anna who was looking at him with hostility, Wuming looked at the goddess behind Gadotsi and the rest. Then there's only you, goddess Stheno. Stheno? Matthew said in surprise. He was obviously shocked by the name. Stheno frowned and immediately turned around to leave. Although she was a goddess, Stheno knew that she did not have much combat power. The reason why the 2 servants, Anna and Matthew, were forced to flee with their masters was that Matthew was too weak, and Anna did not want to fight with her 2 sisters, which led to the scene where the 4 of them were besieged by Stheno and Urieli. Moreover, when Anna picked up her scythe and was ready to fight, Stheno and Urieli were sad that their sister was going to kill her sister again. The 2 of them knew that if their younger sister were to fight, the 2 of them would not be a match at all. Moreover, in mythology, Stheno and Urieli were defined as goddesses who had no combat power at all. If they did not appear in the world as servants, Stheno and her sister Urieli would not have any combat power at all. Seeing that Stheno had escaped, Wuming did not rush to chase after her. Instead, he threw Urieli in his arms to Anna. Although Anna was somewhat hostile to Wuming, she would still choose to catch her sister's corpse, even if it was a conspiracy. Let's leave for a while, said Wuming, turning into smoke and disappearing in front of everyone. Anna, who was holding her sister's corpse, Gadotsi, Matthew and Sakura Madu were left in a daze. Wuming chased after Stheno at a leisurely pace. It was not because he was arrogant, but because Stheno was now in Wuming's enchantment. That's right. The moment Wuming activated his noble phantasm, he also activated his enchantment, the mist. If Gadotsi and the others were paying attention, they would realize that the environment around them had changed. Besides, the device on Gadotsi's wrist no longer emitted any sound because the mist released by Wuming interfered with the mana connection. Moreover, Wuming had the ability to turn into mist in his enchantment and appear anywhere in an instant, so Wuming was not in a hurry to catch up with Stheno. Sensing the existence of the otherness in his enchantment, Wuming frowned. He hasn't come out yet? However, after sensing the distance between the 2 of them, Wuming did not bother about him anymore. Instead, he sensed Stheno's location. By the way, even if Stheno was an assassin and also had a level A+ aura concealment, he could not get rid of Wuming. The entire enchantment was filled with mist. As long as there was mist, Wuming could detect it. Therefore, Wuming had already discovered Stheno, who was hiding in the shadows of the alley ahead. After stopping, Wuming walked to the entrance of the alley slowly and looked at the shadows. Do you want to play hide-and-seek, great goddess? Wuming smiled as he walked into the alley. When he got close to Stheno, a charming voice was suddenly heard. Smile of the goddess. Following the activation of the noble phantasm, Wuming stood there motionlessly as if he was frozen. Then Stheno's figure appeared. I thought you were a powerful hero, but I didn't expect you to be the same as the others. A man is a man indeed, Stheno said slowly as if he had already won. Walking to Wuming, who was standing there in a daze, Stheno raised his head and looked at Wuming. What beautiful eyes, what a handsome face. What a pity, Stheno said as if she was intoxicated. None of the men who had been affected by her charm could survive. To be able to attack us sisters, I thought you were really a man who wasn't tempted by beauty. Stheno smiled, then raised his hand and caressed Wuming's cheek. Suddenly, when Stheno touched Wuming's face, he seemed to have seen something rather shocking. Shock was written all over his face. Slap. Suddenly, a hand grabbed Stheno's arm. Then a rather frivolous voice was heard. It's not good to casually invade other people's privacy, great goddess. What? Stheno exclaimed in surprise. Looking at the man who grabbed his wrist without any trace of being affected by the charm, Stheno smiled bitterly. I see. Was that all a disguise? What a cunning man. Wuming only maintained his smile and didn't explain anything. As for the appearance of being affected by the charm just now, that was an act by Wuming. As someone who had seen through Stheno and Euryale's true names, Wuming naturally wouldn't be so rash as to underestimate Stheno. Even if Wuming could take down Euryale without any difficulty, Wuming wouldn't think that Stheno was easy to deal with. After all, no matter how weak and useless the other party was, she was still a goddess. For example, just now, Stheno had only touched Wuming's cheek and seen some information about Wuming. In terms of skills, it should be similar to seeing through true names. As an existence on the same level as them or even a higher level existence, Wuming said that there was no need to underestimate any god. Gods never lack trump cards. Well, of course, if the difference in strength was too great, he could still underestimate them. Cough cough. In short, because Wuming realized that the other party was a charming goddess, he originally wanted to use a world-class item to resist Wuming, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. After all, his hypostasis was very high, and he had proven before that he was immune to almost all mind control without a world-class item. Therefore, Wuming pretended to be charmed and grabbed Stheno when she approached Wuming. As for whether Stheno, who was caught by Wuming, would escape or not, Wuming already had a plan. Chapter 340. Wuming grabbed Stheno's hand and a silver chain wrapped around it. Wuming had plenty of pirated Enkidu in his dimension artifact. Cough cough, anyway Stheno couldn't run away. Moreover, after Stheno saw what happened to Wuming, he gave up on the idea of running away. Don't worry, Sly Man. I have no intention of running away, even if you did something terrible to my sister. With a smile on his face, Stheno calmly said something rather strange. Although I know you're saying that I didn't kill Euryale, please don't be so strange. Forget it. Wuming shrugged nonchalantly and let go of Stheno's hand. However, the Enkidu that was connected to Stheno's hand because of Wuming didn't unlock when Wuming let go of Stheno's hand. What? You still don't trust me? Stheno raised the Enkidu on his arm and said unhappily. I'm a goddess. A goddess won't lie to a hero who has captured her. Stheno narrowed his eyes and smiled at Wuming as if he was looking at a delightful toy. Forget about being a hero. I'm not interested in being a hero. I'm just an assassin, at least for now. Wuming shrugged. Wuming's last sentence was to tell Stheno not to expose his identity. He just wanted to be a different kind of assassin. Oh, since the great hero says so, I'll just listen to you. Stheno smiled at Wuming. Let's go. Your Euryale should be awake by now, right? Wuming grabbed Stheno's hand and started walking towards where they came from. As expected of a brave warrior. You actually dared to hold the hand of a goddess. However, since you didn't do anything to Euryale, I will forgive your rudeness. Stheno raised his neck like a proud princess. I feel like it's better to get rid of you now. On the way, Wuming began to ask Stheno for information or to verify his speculation. After Wuming told Stheno about his speculation that Lev had resummoned 7 servants, Stheno nodded. As expected of you. That's right. The man in the green hat summoned 7 new servants, including me and Euryale. Stheno walked elegantly as if Wuming didn't take the initiative to hold her hand, but she took the initiative to hold Stheno's hand. Then he began to introduce their lineup. I'm an assassin, Euryale is an archer, and Saber is a muscleman. I can tell he's a lecherous guy. His eyes lit up when he saw Euryale and me, and he even tried to flirt with us. Stheno frowned. He was rather displeased. Stheno knew how to talk up trides up knew how to flirt with. Castor looks like a mature old man. He doesn't talk much. Ryder is a red-haired muscular man. He seems to be a king and he has some connection with Zeus. He's quite annoying. And the way Castor looks at Ryder is a bit weird. He's full of passion. Stheno smiled mischievously. Wuming ignored her and continued to listen to Stheno's introduction. Stheno looked at Wuming, who didn't respond. He was not surprised and continued to talk. Berserker was a guy covered in black. I couldn't see his face clearly. However, this guy was always by the other Saber's side. You don't know how excited Berserker was at that time. It looked like he wanted to kill Saber. Wuming thought that the Berserker mentioned by Stheno should be the black Berserker they met before, and the other Saber mentioned by Stheno should be Artoria. Combined with what Stheno said, Wuming now knew why Berserker came straight to him. I'm afraid that Berserker is a Knight of the Round Table, Wuming thought. Although Wuming didn't think that a Knight of the Round Table could become a Berserker, there were exceptions to everything. Like Mordred with her obsession with Artoria, she was likely to become a Berserker. In the last Holy Grail War, although Mordred appeared as a Saber, her fighting style was as violent as a Berserker. But the Berserker who attacked Wuming didn't think it was Mordred. Why was Wuming so sure? It felt wrong. Well, that's right, the Berserker didn't give Wuming the same feeling as Mordred at all. Wuming was very confident in his intuition and didn't accept any rebuttal. Ahem. After all, even if Mordred became a Berserker, she wouldn't have an obsession with Wuming. If it was really Mordred, then Artoria would be very busy right now, and the Berserker wouldn't attack Wuming at all. What about Lancer? Wuming shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He asked Stheno. This is also why I put Lancer at the end. Stheno's eyes began to look serious. You must be careful. Lancer is a god. If you really want to call him a demigod, he should have the ability to attack gods. He gave me a very dangerous feeling. Stheno recalled the golden figure he had seen before. It shone like the sun. The other party had a special attack against gods, and with the light of the sun, it was too bad for Stheno, who was a snake. Like the sun, wearing golden armor, holding a long spear. Wuming felt that this person was more familiar the more he thought about it. I hope it's not him, Wuming said softly. If it was really him, Gilgamesh might be in danger. What are you mumbling about? Stheno rolled her eyes at Wuming. Nothing, Wuming said casually. Umph. Stheno saw that Wuming was perfunctory and didn't ask any more. After a few minutes, Wuming began to complain. I was wondering why you ran so far. Wuming looked at Stheno with disdain. They had been walking for a while, and they still hadn't reached where Matthew and the others were. After all, London wasn't small. A Wuming could transform into smoke and move quickly, but Stheno couldn't. If it weren't for you chasing me, I wouldn't have run so far. Stheno looked at Wuming with disdain. So it's my fault. Wuming was helpless. Then unlock this for me so I can keep up with your speed. Stheno raised her hand, and the silver chain on it glowed faintly. This was the symbol of the Enkidu, which was sealing Stheno's power. I have other reasons for not unlocking it for you. At this time, Wuming was about to explain, but his expression suddenly changed. That guy went over. That guy? Is there anything else in your enchantment? Stheno looked at Wuming in confusion. However, the moment Stheno finished asking, Wuming didn't answer. He picked Stheno up and started sprinting. What are you doing? You gave me a fright. There's no time to explain, we'll talk later. Just like that, Wuming carried Stheno in a princess carry and sprinted in the direction of Gadatsi and the others. Chapter 341. When Wuming went after Stheno, there were only 4 people left. Gadatsi, Matthew, Anna, and the unconscious Urieli. Gadatsi looked at the direction where Wuming went, then she looked at Matthew. Matthew, is that man also a servant? He's so powerful. Gadatsi was a little excited, and her eyes were shining. Yes, Senpai, the man who went after the enemy is a servant, but strangely, I haven't found his aura. His rank may be assassin. After Matthew explained to Gadatsi about Wuming, he wanted to contact their support personnel, but, Doctor? Are you there? No matter how Matthew called the device on Gadatsi's hand, no one responded. What's going on? Just when Matthew was puzzled, Gadatsi's panicked voice came. Matthew, look, the environment around us has changed. Hearing Gadatsi's surprised and slightly panicked voice, Matthew also looked around. The surrounding buildings had become European-style buildings, which were completely different from the modern buildings in Winterwood City. Similarly, there was no one around and there was no trace of life. Because of the fog brought by Wuming, Matthew and Gadatsi didn't notice the change in the surrounding environment at first. If it weren't for Gadatsi's curiosity about the fog, it would have taken Matthew a while to notice the change in the surrounding environment. Matthew walked to a nearby corner and touched the wall. Senpai, this should be a 19th century building. Matthew turned around and looked at Gadatsi. Hey Matthew, do you know this place? Gadatsi was a little surprised. Yes, I've seen it before. Matthew smiled and nodded. Matthew is really knowledgeable. Gadotsi praised Matthew, which made Matthew blush a little. This fog contains extremely powerful toxins. Ordinary people may die if they stay here for a long time. At this time Anna suddenly said. Gadotsi and Matthew looked at Anna, who had been holding her sister before. At this time, Anna had already hugged Sakura Madu in her arms and protected Sakura Madu with her cloak. What? Senpai, how do you feel now? Matthew looked at Gadotsi with a little panic. Although it's not that I don't trust Anna, I really don't feel uncomfortable. Gadotsi touched her body and shook her head. Really, senpai? Matthew still didn't believe it and looked at Gadotsi with concern. Really, Matthew, don't be so nervous. Gadotsi smiled and waved her hand to signal Matthew to calm down. That Anna sis, actually I don't feel any discomfort. It's better to say that the air in the fog is very fresh. At this time, Sakura Madu, who was protected in Anna's arms, also spoke. Anna was silent at this time, thinking. Previously, Anna was silent for a while because of her sister's corpse, and didn't take care of Sakura Madu, but when she found that her sister was not dead, she felt relieved. At the same time, Anna also discovered the toxins contained in the fog. After that, she quickly protected Sakura Madu. In other words, Sakura Madu was not protected by Anna for a short period of time. Anna and Matthew could stay in the fog for a long time without being hurt, but their masters were also fine. Gadotsi was not affected at all, and Sakura Madu said that the air was very fresh. It's better to be cautious. After all, this is likely to be assassin's enchantment. Anna was silent for a moment, but she still didn't release Sakura Madu from her cloak. However, after Anna said the word enchantment, Matthew was shocked. Enchantment? After all, Matthew already knew that Anna was also a goddess, so Matthew felt that Anna's words were very credible. Looking at the somewhat surprised Matthew, Gadotsi, who didn't know what an enchantment was puzzled. Matthew, what is that? Enchantment? Gadotsi asked. Senpai, enchantment is a magic that can instantiate one's own scenery. You can think of it as an independent small world. Matthew knew that his master was not a magician, so he explained it in the simplest terms. Independent small world. Is it that powerful? Gadotsi was also surprised. Well, it's called enchantment. It's called the magic closest to magic. It can be said to be the highest level magic. Matthew nodded. The highest level magic? For Gadotsi, she didn't understand the meaning of magic, but the term highest level magic was very useful for Gadotsi. After all, it was the highest level magic. And among magicians with enchantment are quite rare. It seems that assassin is not an ordinary person. Matthew looked at the direction where Wuming left. The servant over there is right. She is indeed not an ordinary person. A seductive voice sounded, and it was a voice that everyone was familiar with. What's that sound? Gadotsi looked in the direction of Urieli, who was unconscious. As expected, the unconscious Urieli had woken up. She was sitting on the ground in an elegant posture, looking like a young lady. Huh? Didn't you say that you were killed by assassin just now? How did you come back to life? Gadotsi's face was filled with a zombie expression. After all, Gadotsi always thought that Urieli was killed by Wuming. How rude of me, unknown master. Let's not talk about how I'm a goddess. How could I die so easily? Moreover, that guy isn't a cruel person. Why would he kill me? Urieli looked at Gadotsi with disgust, which made Gadotsi feel a little embarrassed. Are you awake, sister? Anna knew that her sister was not dead, so she was not surprised to see Urieli wake up. I'm so sad, my dear sister. Can't you be more gentle with your sister? Urieli said uninterestedly. Anna didn't say anything. She didn't even look at Urieli. You won't be our enemy anymore, right? Matthew said uncertainly. Yes, of course. I've been defeated by that man and I'm his prisoner now. I won't attack you anymore. Urieli didn't feel like a prisoner at all. She looked at Gadotsi and Matthew playfully. Besides, although Master asked us to kill all living creatures, Stheno and I have no intention of attacking you. We're only chasing you because our sister is here. Sigh. Matthew and Gadotsi were dumbfounded. Hearing this, Gadotsi and Mashu remembered that it was Anna who passed by them at the beginning, and then the two of them began to chase after them. Because of that, Matthew had no choice but to propose a collaboration with Anna. I'm sorry? Anna's expression couldn't be seen, but Matthew and Gadotsi felt that Anna's face was extremely red. Let's not talk about that first. A servant is coming, Riley said calmly. Laya dash. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.